the desert. Endless world of sand and sun where you will burn alive, be bitten by snakes, or something much, much worse. Oh my god. Oh my god. That's huge! Take that, make health regeneration even harder, and make zombies the smartest they've ever been. What do I even do here? What do I even do? And this is going to be one of my most difficult 100 days yet. And a new 100 days adventure means new merch in the store. Check out these awesome new posters, t-shirts, and hoodie design with your welcome to the Dunes, the first of the chapter 4 of the multiverse. We're going to try to do these for every single one, so make sure to collect them all. Link is in the description or down there. But let's get started with my hottest adventure yet. Day 1. And I only have 2 minutes, so I have to go. And by 2 minutes, I mean before I'm going to burn to death. So I grabbed a few blocks and sprinted off into the sands. These water plants are going to help a lot because I need to stay hydrated. And the wild tomatoes I found are going to keep me fed. I grabbed a few blocks of cactus and ran along the sand when the thing I need to be the most afraid of started rearing its head. I grabbed some stronger cactus that is apparently immune to gravity, scarfing down tomatoes and trying to find a space where I could hide. I need to get off the surface and quickly. And those 2 minutes were up. So now I'm basically dying of heat stroke out in the desert. I broke my way into a small little hill thinking if I didn't expose my head to the sun, maybe I'd be fine, but that wasn't good enough. Luckily nearby was a small ravine down into the ground with a single block of water that I could survive in. This is starting chaotic. But you might notice that my health isn't regenerating, and that's because I not only need to stay fed and hydrated, but take care of all of my limbs, and my leg is broken currently. I won't be able to do anything about that for a while. We're just thinking about the basics at this point. But I need to bridge over the void right now to get myself some gravel. Breaking all of that, I was able to get a few pieces of raw flint. Napping that on the stone, I can get regular flint, and that's what lets me craft up a flint knife, which I'm gonna need to head back to the surface to use. I tried waiting out the sun, just standing in the pool right here, looking at what all the recipes will require. But I also need to think about shelter, because once it gets dark, mobs are gonna become a big threat. You see, hostile mobs in this pack are smarter than they've ever been. A single skeleton can kill you. Zombies will smell your scent from miles away, and if you leave them undisturbed, they'll summon friends. But again, I'm just sitting in a puddle with 2 hearts right now, so there's not much I can do about that, except learn. I researched a bunch of healing items, and the moment it was safe to run up onto the surface, I ran around smacking any bushes I could find, just trying to get enough sticks. There's a little bit of dirt, which I could get, a little bit more cactus, which I can make a little bit of food from, and a few pots, which I could smash down into bricks. Can't really do much with them, and I'm still on fire, even though it's dark outside. But I ran towards my shelter, sealing it, and hearing the mobs outside. I do not feel safe. I was able to craft a few cacti into planks, which I can make into a crafting table, but that's where my luck ran out. How am I supposed to make planks without planks? Because a cutting board takes planks to make. Oh no. Well, this is a puzzle. But it was one I was able to easily solve. That saguaro cactus, that crafts down into planks, which I could make into a cutting board. Yes. Okay. Unfortunately, those are the only planks I have that can be turned into wood chunks. So I only have exactly enough for one tool. It's possible. And the skeletons and mobs that are outside swarming around my base, that's gonna be a bit of a bigger problem. And they didn't want to just eat my brains, they wanted to jam out while doing it. Huh? That mob with the backpack on, it is stronger, it's faster, it hits harder, and it has a random potion effect. It can literally punch me to death. Then again, I have 2 hearts. Anything can kill me with so much as a bad look right now.
I'm in big trouble.
I spent the whole night just randomly opening the wall, punching mobs down, and hoping they die from fall damage. Crafting up a few slabs to potentially make some firing slits in the wall so I could safely defend myself, and only really realizing that it had turned to day 2 when I started roasting to death in my room.
Oh, if they drop this backpack, that's huge.
I was able to make a small, very basic mob farm and tested my luck.
Oh, that's huge.
Inside was a bunch of emeralds, gold, some blank enchanted books, but everything I could potentially use to survive. And if you're saying at this point, wow, Legs, that's really, really lucky. How'd you get that? Believe it or not, this is the good beginning.
Oh my God, that's huge. Did I just spawn in quicksand? I'm gonna die.
Oh my God!
What do we do from here? Okay, so that'll get me 2. String. See, a bucket would be smart. A bucket would be really smart, but so would a stone pickaxe. A bucket would let me leave this room in the daytime, which I think is the most important thing I need. The problem is the skeletons are in the way of the water. Okay, I'm gonna make a play here.
Now, I'm not potentially going the direction you're thinking, as I'm taking 3 of these ingots to make myself a bucket. There's a small pool of water nearby, and if I can carry some of it with me, I can cool myself on the go, allowing me to finally be mobile in the desert here, although only a little bit at a time. I broke through the wall and just made a break for it, arrows whizzing by in every direction, trying to get away from all of the mobs who are here and find a spot that I could survive a little bit better. I had to stop several times, just hiding in a puddle to cool myself off, climbing a nearby tree and breaking the leaves, hoping to get the plant fibers I would need to be able to make an axe. But me running around the desert was upsetting the worm beneath me, and I am freaking out. So my MO basically became run and then hide in water whenever the rumbling happened. Run and then hide. And that's when I saw it, an oasis in the distance.
Sanctuary.
A large pond that I could possibly stay in, cool off in the night, and it even had a campfire right here. And a camel that I could have a friend to survive with. I grabbed the bed swimming into this small rock here, having a protected space that I could actually put the bed down and sleep. Except you have to wait until much later in the night to sleep in this pack. Somewhat guarantees that a few mobs would spawn. So we're gonna be sleeping a lot, if nothing else, just to survive.
We're in business. Okay, what do we got? String, gold, some cookies. It's actually really good. Health. Wait, I slept. I recovered my health because I slept. I'm so excited. Oh, I'm still roasting. Okay.
I broke down the cobwebs in here for a little bit of string, but in swimming out was jumped by a few mobs who had followed my scent inside. And you remember how I told you they were dangerous?
Oh my God. Infinite headache.
Oh. Oh no. So now, with a splitting headache and blind in one eye, I had to play the angles extremely carefully, waiting for the skeleton to get close enough to melee, because that's a thing they do here, with that being the only way that I can actually take it out and clear the entrance of the cave. I spent a few fleeting moments outside getting some seeds, sugarcane, and a tiny bit of moss, having a few husks join me in the pool, but I was able to deal with that. The lit campfire nearby is crucial crucial. I threw all of the wood blocks onto it, jumping into the water repeatedly to keep myself from overheating from being too close to said campfire, grabbing all of the cooked wooden chunks, being very careful to not wake the worm from inside the cave. This is terrifying. Genuinely terrifying. Now for all of that, we can make a wooden pickaxe. I told you all this was going to be one of the hardest 100 days we've ever done, and I meant that entirely. I mined up a few stray pieces of cobblestone from around the cave, trying to sculpt a small patch of dirt near the back of the space that I could turn into a space to actually grow some crops. The water plants I had recovered, I was really hoping to be able to plant them in some way, but they just don't. Or at least they won't in current conditions. I made myself a hoe and a pickaxe out of the cobblestone I had, making myself a stone sword and setting up my very first bit of farming. Still couldn't plant the water seeds, but I'm spending my time making the cave manageable, using a bucket to correct the water flow, breaking the dripstone that I'm afraid would kill me instantly, and trying to craft a tonic, but unfortunately this specific type of flower doesn't work for that. Not a problem, we'll figure it out. I used an axe to break down and move around a few of the wood planks here, crafting up a rotten flesh chunk, which I can smelt inside of the furnace to get myself a single piece of leather. The only problem is I can't touch the furnace while it's on. Oh! I can't afford to touch that right now. So with half a heart to my name, I took the single bone I had, crafted up a little bit of bone meal to get some wheat seeds from grass, planting tomatoes and crops, and calling it a very long day. Okay, so sleeping's a full heal. That is good to know. You're gonna see me sleeping a lot in this video, I guess. Fully healed from a long night's sleep, I figured out that the water seeds was a lighting issue. I was able to finally plant them at the back of the cave after moving the torch over. I dumped a bunch of the supplies that I had into the barrel here, finally able to pull the piece of leather out of the furnace. That means we're 1/4 of the way to a single piece of armor. Oh boy. I swam out into the lake and a skeleton was waiting for me there, so that's gonna be a problem. And skeletons are brutal. I used most of the wood from inside here to craft myself up a shield, and this is going to prove invaluable to my survival. The fact that they rush you, jump away, and fly trying to 360 no-scope you makes this basically a COD lobby, just with far less cursing. But relying on the puddle to keep myself cool and checking out the different plants I had around here, I had options. There was moss that I could harvest down to be able to get myself a little bit more, but I realized that grass is going to be far more important. By bone mealing it, I could get flowers, vanilla flowers, that could be crafted together with seeds to make myself healing herbs. Use this. Yes. Perfect. Do they stack? They do. Perfect. So healing herbs. 5 health. So 1/4 of my health. Takes gold though. Oh, that's so expensive. Since I had the string from cobwebs, I crafted a few cactus planks into sticks and made myself a bow so I could potentially return fire, finding a few pieces of coal ore in the mountain directly behind my watering hole and basically burning to death to get them. Oh, more turtles. Hi, turtles. Hiding inside, I used that coal to craft up a few torches, which I started making a small area of protected light, harvesting the bamboo that I had placed here to make myself a few more sticks, and sneaking through the night as me jumping around constantly was making quite a ruckus. I grabbed myself a few blocks of wool, thinking I can make myself a bedroll for if I ventured out of this pond. Spoiler alert. I'm going to be stuck here for a while. Looking into pieces of armor that could allow me to deal with the heat when I started to freeze to death instead. I took the single piece of leather to craft up a desert cap, which will hopefully give me a bit of protection for the sun. The following morning, having to kill a few turtles and drowned, blocking the entrance of the cave, and standing on the lily pad taking fire from far downfield. Thankfully, I finally have a shield, so I can actually do something about it, luring the skeletons to enter their melee range into the water where they kind of get stuck and I can actually win the battle. Once they were all taken care of, I killed the camel, thinking for some reason that I'd be able to get leather, and don't worry, Twitch chat right now is making fun of me as I record this commentary live. Hi. I cleared out the final skeleton, digging back into the wall and using a bucket to keep myself cool while mining out a little bit more cobblestone and coal so I could start crafting up more torches to secure more of the area, hoping that the light would keep mobs spawning away, knowing that it won't help at all with whatever's lurking underground. While I was running around putting that down, there was a block here that looked like it might have lapis inside, but I don't have the tools to excavate that quite yet. And me hopping around constantly to place all of these torches is making the worm angry, so maybe I should get the hint. I hid inside my cave for a while before going out and throwing down bone meal on the grass, just trying to get myself more flowers and seeds so I could craft up more healing herbs. Every time the rumbling stopped, I would go out and place down a few more torches, hiding in the pond until it got a little bit late, and then just trying to sleep into the night as early as I could. The following morning, there was a thunderstorm overhead and skeletons in the pool, who I immediately had to deal with. And that storm is looking pretty ominous. A tornado would be pretty lethal right now. Back in my ocean video, I could land pretty much anywhere. In this reality, not so much. So I dug underground trying to make myself a bit of a tornado bunker, making a small little circle of sandstone that I was really hoping was deep enough that I wouldn't get pulled up into the sky.
I hear it demolishing that base. Oh, my bed.
There was a few sounds of mobs nearby, so I started digging off in that direction, heading downwards before eventually breaking into a small crevice of a cave. A few skeletons in here proved a bit of a threat, but between now having a shield and learning the strategy of how to deal with mobs, I was able to get through of this, only taking a few hearts of damage. It's a pretty solid improvement. I swam back up the water column and oh boy, that tornado had done some serious damage.
Ugh. There's a cow at some point. Oh no, the campfire's gone. I needed that. Wait, I can... logs.
So losing the campfire hurts, but I have to just move forward. I collected all of the scraps from the trees around here, breaking down any leaves, hoping to get a jungle sapling. But when I got the notification that a blood moon was about to rise, I got the feeling that I really wanted to be inside and have the inside be fully secured. So I rushed to plug any lingering holes in my cave, getting whatever food and water I could from the crops here and bracing myself for a long night. I can't touch the water because I'll freeze to death. I have to smelt something so the room is warm enough that I can even just stand here.
We're just gonna stay right here and hope for the best.
I'm just trying to sit here and stay silent. Mobs are attracted to torches, to movement, to blocks being broken, but they're also just passively attracted to me. So this doesn't really work. I had to bridge over to the entrance of the cave because I can't touch the water without freezing to death, fighting whatever husks were trying to push their way in, hiding by the brewing stand, which thankfully gives off just enough heat to prevent me from dying. And the husks, they're pushing each other in. So eventually they just make it into the water and I had to block it off entirely, really hoping that they wouldn't mine through the blocks because that is still something that they can do. My stone sword broke halfway through the night and I had to craft myself up a replacement. And I just made two while I was at it because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of mobs I'm going to have to deal with here. And while this might not be the most riveting angle, it is likely the only one that I can survive as I'm stabbing mobs, abusing a corner peek into the morning of day 7, where I had to switch to standing into the water itself so I wouldn't roast to death out of the frying pan into the freezer. I thought it would be smart to set up a small gap for the mobs to drop into on the back as well. And I was right, having a mummy drop down and drop a fire sword with a ton of durability on it, which had the added effect of setting mobs on fire. Unfortunately, that makes me even hotter, so I can only really kill things from in the pond. Another one dropped a Pharaoh's chestplate.
Oh, that's amazing.
And this basically has the stats of iron, so massive upgrade. I combined the fire swords, luring more mobs into one of the 2 death traps surrounding my base, eventually, about halfway through the day, being brave enough to peek out, having a few skeletons there, one shooting me in the head promptly after exiting, and restarting my whole case of blindness and headaches.
That's an amazing shot.
Thankfully, I can eat a healing herbs, which will allow me to heal my head, solving the different condition effects, but also regenerating health. Getting into a bit of a sniper duel with that one skeleton on the ledge who is really nailing their angles, having to spend another herbs just so I could see straight, and thankfully picking up a few steak from the furnace so I had something to eat. I'm pinned out front as well, so I have mobs at both angles and no way to exit the cave. So I tried digging out a few other small boreholes, stabbing anything I could find, and braving it out the back of the cave, just kind of getting blood on the ground, so it would lure all the mobs here so I can stab them and kill them as well. You might not think that spending an entire day inside the cave was the best thing I could do, but it is truly the best thing I could do right now, because each of those skeletons alone can kill me. All of them is an existential threat. I headed downstairs to sleep, mainly just to recover my health, peeking outside to lure over any remaining mobs using the small little drop mob farm here to take them out one at a time. After a day and a half of constant fighting, I was finally able to swim out into the pond in front of my house, clearing out the mobs that were here and getting into a corner peeking quick shot duel with the final few skeletons behind my base. All that fighting woke the worm, so I had to hope and hold my breath, having it not punch through the ground as I broke down a little bit of wood that I could see here, finding some new enemies in the distance.
Fellas, I do not have time for you right now.
The one good thing of fighting all of those skeletons through the blood moon meant I had a ton of bones, so I could use all of that on the grass patch that I had made here to get myself a whole bunch more flowers and seeds. I still wanted to expand it, so I went around collecting all of the dirt from around the whole base, just putting it all into one square, being very careful to make sure that the moss was as far separated as it could be so that I wouldn't accidentally bone meal any of that, replacing the dirt with moss. It's still going to take time for this to grow into grass before it'll give me seeds, but it is a way to be able to have regenerating items a lot faster. There's even more underneath some of the sand right next to the lake, but that's a tomorrow problem and I don't want to risk getting overrun to get it. I was able to craft up 11 herbs through all of that work through the day, and I slept so I wouldn't freeze in the night. We're gonna try to keep that productivity going. Heading into the following morning, I was able to harvest some of the water plants that were inside, working on finishing up the grass patch here. There are a few skeletons that had caught my scent following me into the lake, as well as a few husks who I was able to take out, having them drop enough rotten flesh that I'm gonna be able to make another piece of leather for myself. The tonics I'm making right now are helping me offset the damage that I have incoming, and through a good portion of the day, I was able to get all of the different dirt around here rearranged. So I have space for some crop plots, the grass patch where I'm gonna be getting all of my seeds from, as well as an area to plant down all of the water seeds. I actually even put down a tree and was able to bone meal it using all of that to recover on some of my wood supplies before I would have any of my tools break on me. I saw mobs starting to approach as it got dark, so I ran into the cave to sleep as soon as I could, but unfortunately they had found me dealing with a few skeletons in the pond in the morning again. But we're starting to fall into routine. I got my first apple ever, which I'm gonna want to save for potential gapples down the road, just moving back and forth between these dirt patches using the bones from the skeletons who are needlessly hunting me to grow more trees. Through all of that work, I was able to get myself up over 40 of the herbs, using a few of them to keep myself alive to keep that farming cycle going. But it's not just the mobs I have to worry about, the sky is angry too.
Oh, come on, I was just starting to make progress.
I'm just keeping my eye on that cyclone while farming as much seeds as I can because I'm afraid it's going to turn this direction, take all of that dirt, and set me back to square one. Once I started feeling a little bit of a momentum pull, I grabbed my bed and went down into the cave system, trying to sleep down there, but being jumped by a few skeletons that wouldn't let me get rest. Heading into the cave proper, I was able to light up a portion of it, killing an ostrich here, hoping it would drop leather, and, well, it didn't either, but it did get sucked up into the sky. I headed through the ravine just trying to light up the whole thing so I wouldn't have any mobs spawning underneath my base, finding a small patch of dripstone, which led into some gravel, which I mined up, and copper, which I wanted to keep. There's a bunch of dirt underneath here as well, and I'm mining all of that as it is an extremely useful resource in the desert. Heading upstairs to check, thankfully my cave was undisassembled, and I was able to head back down to rest. The following morning, I made myself a new pickaxe as well as a chest where I could store some of the most valuable items and seeds down here so they wouldn't be lost in a tornado. Heading up to the cave, there was a ton of mobs in the door, including a zombie with partial diamond armor and a backpack that they unfortunately did not drop. It took a little while to keep clearing out mobs, and I'm starting to realize that I'm gonna need to secure this place, preferably with some walls to keep the mobs out. The only materials I have right now is wood, but I want to make this go a little bit further, so I'm using a combination of wood and fences, hoping that the little bit of variation in the width of the wall would be enough to trick the mobs that they wouldn't be able to get to me. I was cooking flesh inside, so I was able to get a few pieces of leather, heading to the point where I can make a corner and starting to turn, having to harvest trees throughout the day to be able to replenish my supplies to actually build these fortifications. Even with a desert helmet on, I need to constantly jump into the lake to keep myself cool, and chopping down trees, replanting. That's all I did today. It was the first day that I was actually able to pretty much spend outside and work for the full duration, but once the skeletons started spawning in at night, knocking me down to 4 hearts in a matter of seconds, I decided to head back downstairs and rest. The following morning, one of those skeletons decided to leave me with a parting gift.
Backpack. What do we get? Ooh. Okay, if nothing else, another backpack is huge. Huh. That's concerning. They stack now? No, they do not. That's annoying.
Leaving the name tags behind, I headed out to continue working on the wall, getting a little bit of a help.
Hi. Hello, tree.
I didn't want to make the whole wall out of wood and something that will end up being prophetic in the very near future. I figured a stone gate would make sense. For right now, we're just going to have it as a wall though. I headed over towards the tent, grabbing ladders from the side, allowing me to secure the wall to the fence, and unfortunately getting a big tall tree, which I can't really afford to chop down right now as I would need to be too far away from the water and would potentially be taking some heat stroke damage. I made a few other spots to be able to plant trees, harvesting whatever water I can find, looking behind the base to see what I could potentially do back there, and just closing in the wall facing directly opposite my cave, using sandstone as a bit of a base there and just carrying it across. But I want to be able to expand the area that I can actually operate in, so I grabbed a little bit of water, making a small pond in the corner behind the actual base, trying to light that up and thinking maybe I can set up multiple different layers of different protections and walls, and having another place where I can cool off allows me to expand the range where I can actually work from. I took some time to replant all of the sugarcane, chopping trees into the night, standing on top of the tent and being able to actually hold the wall a little bit. That is until I got shot and thinking maybe it's a good idea to just head inside because the wall is not complete and there are 2 skeletons right here setting up a dangerous crossfire that I was just barely able to escape. I stashed some more materials inside and the following morning harvested more sandstone from downstairs. I'm going to use that to expand out the wall, but I think having a workshop down here would be good, so I want to make a decent sized room. There's a whole bunch of zombies that were following my blood trail into the cave, so I once again just had to clear out my front door. making a small area with some moss and bamboo down in the workshop area and dealing with quite a few husks and zombies that had crawled their way over the hill. I just continued the sandstone wall as far as I could, as farming wood was taking a little bit too long, taking all of the rotten flesh from the husks and dropping it in to make more leather, while having a few skeletons break my shield and then immediately shoot me in the head a few times. I headed inside, healed, crafted up a new shield, and then tried to win the sniper duel, decisively losing and having to cower inside healing from tonics. Once recovered, third time's a charm, I was able to take out the remaining skeletons, including the ones that were standing up on the cliff trying to snipe me, figuring out that if I use the high ground, I can shoot them before they can shoot me. I won that fight with 1.5 hearts of health, and I decided to, instead of healing, just quickly build as much of a wall as I could, just trying to secure everything, torching up the interior, immediately getting clowned on for my past decisions, having a few monsters make their way into the space, and freezing to death into the night. Thankfully, I had just enough leather to craft myself up a desert tunic, so this will protect me come morning as long as I survive that long. Crafting up a bunch of dough, which I could use to make some bread, thinking maybe I should head outside, and then getting frostbite and forgetting that I can't touch a furnace without burning myself, so I am just having a really rough go of it. After that very unlucky day, I figured just start the morning excavating out the workshop space down here in the bunker, but the sounds upstairs were not reassuring at all.
Why do I hear explosions? No, seriously, tell me, why do I hear explosions? Why?
I grabbed all the sandstone that I thought I might need heading up the water, baking some bread in the furnace, and then heading out trying to enclose the area. There's a few husks here that are dropping full rotten flesh chunks, so I can smelt that into leather, jumping into the pond to cool off, and then trying to secure the back wall. But I don't want it all to be sandstone, and now that I have a little bit more time to harvest wood, I started exchanging some of it out, putting logs and fences in its place, and just using sandstone for the southernmost wall. With this leather cooked, I actually have enough to make another piece of this desert armor, meaning I'm gonna have a lot more heat protection. In researching what else I can do that would potentially make a difference there, I realized that soul sand and soul flame specifically could help as well. Now, it was only a theory, as a few other mods I've used that do temperatures treat blue fire as cold. I wasn't sure this one did, but it was worth testing.
This is a potentially expensive theory. It works. Okay. Soul sand braziers everywhere.
Being able to stand out on dry ground and get work done is massive. I immediately started farming trees, taking another bone block and setting up a second brazier on the opposite side, using trapdoors surrounding both so I wouldn't accidentally set myself on fire or potentially have that fire spread. Because a little bit of fire is cold, but I'm willing to bet that a lot would be quite warm. I'm using a lot of the other bone meal that I have to just make as much wood as possible, preparing to use a lot of that to secure and expand the wall into its proper final materials. But the world had different plans.
Game, no. No. No, 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 no. After I finally have a place.
What is that? Not wanting to test my luck and see exactly what that is, I headed over into the cave, picked up the bread that I had started earlier, cooked up my final piece of leather, crafted myself a sleeping bag, and slept here. The following morning, the mobs were gone, but the storm wasn't. But I decided to power through, just harvesting whatever trees I could to be able to get all the supplies to work on the fence. I finished repairs on one corner as the whistling just kept getting louder and louder, and I really should have gotten the hint, but I didn't. Instead, trying really hard to get the wall done and then watching myself slowly skid across the ground.
Okay, so it's pulling that way. Just barely. As long as I don't jump. It's definitely trying to pull me this way. Oh no. Oh no. Okay, I'm wedged against the block. I am off the ground. Oh no, it's right above me. I am pressing keys as hard as I possibly can. No, this is gonna pull me up.
So having barely, by the skin of my teeth, avoided being picked up by the tornado, I tunneled underground here. Without water, I now had to be very careful about temperatures, having to find a way to get under the lake using my map mod to be able to place myself to be able to cool off. This might work. Oh, it's gonna destroy everything I just made. Oh no! Oh, and there goes my water. I made the mistake of getting a little too close to the water's surface, being sucked up onto the ground and smushed against the wall, and we're right back to square one. It's pulling me against the wall. I shouldn't have come back up. Oh, all of the wall is destroyed. Oh, and my soul sand braziers, all of it. Oh. Is anything inside destroyed? Okay, inside's fine. Once I finally had enough safe distance, I headed out, picking up all of the broken items, replanting all of the sugarcane, trying to fix all of the water around here and secure the space. The wall was basically a suggestion at this point, so everything was making its way in. Zombies, scorpions, skeletons, you name it. My only saving grace is that I was able to sleep before a lot of them caught my scent. That meant it took until the daytime for a lot of them to make their way up to me, but at least I could see them coming and more weren't spawning. I quickly crafted up and replaced all the fences because I never learned my lesson, and I'm gonna go with the aesthetics of what I want this wall to be over its actual tornado safety. Eventually, we're gonna try to control the weather. Just, we'll get there. I made myself another bone block, hoping to craft up another flint and steel. The only problem is you need gunpowder to light something on fire, and I only have 2 pieces, so that's barely going to be enough. I made both of my braziers so I'd have my working space back, hoping by any stretch of the imagination that another tornado wouldn't hit soon. Some skeletons were able to make their way back in, but I sealed the tent off just solidly with fences, getting to the point where a wall was mostly finished, then thinking, let's carve into the sandstone side as well, putting a bunch of fences in there, and then thinking again, I know it's dangerous, that if I replaced the logs with sandstone, I could then use all of those logs to be able to make more fences to actually complete the place. So I did that, full sending, committing to it, making all of the current wood-based walls transition to the sandstone variant so I could craft up all of the fences I would need and a bunch of torches to be able to start lighting up the wall. Good thing I got it closed too, because there was witches waiting just outside as I slept going into day 17, where one skeleton had made their way in, headshotting me down from full health to 2 hearts with 1 perfectly placed arrow, which I regenerated throughout the day while harvesting trees and downing healing herbs whenever I could. That did end up breaking my helmet, so I had to jump into the lake a little bit more often to once again restore and manage my temperature, grabbing the leather out of the furnace, preparing another soul sand block, and trying to figure out how to make burnt food powder, which I could use to be able to ignite it again. I headed back outside to harvest more trees, putting down ladders on multiple spots so I could secure firing lines on the wall itself, drinking from the lake, cooking up more leather, and replacing my broken helmet with a desert tunic, which would provide even greater heat protection. I crafted myself up a fishing rod with some of the little string I had left, finishing the conversion of the wall, and finally looking out on the space. And about here is where my footage actually messed up and corrupted, so enjoy some really cinematic shots of me fishing for a majority of day 17 and then going into day 18, where I extended the entire wall of the fence 1 block up, securing the back of the hill and closing in a few gaps to making sure that every jump on the back of the mountain was all 2 blocks and mobs wouldn't be able to make their way up. I did some more fishing. I placed a fence across the top of the hill that I lived in as well and cooked up the fish, but don't exactly know how to burn them just yet, so that's something we'll have to solve in the morning. Since I messed up so badly, here's a beautiful video of a sunset. And the following morning, you're just stuck with my face as I'm chopping down more trees, killing any mobs that come around, and landing myself another backpack. Backpack. What's in the backpack? Yo, there's a diamond! That's huge! Another enchanted book. I think the books just don't work.
I think the books just don't work, but still, that is massive. Oh my goodness. Like, seriously, massive. Oh, my helmet broke. Okay, we can fix that. We can work on that. Okay, so for context, this is what we need to make a weather deflector, which will prevent the tornadoes from coming. This is what we need to make the weather items. 2 diamonds apiece. So this is 1/4 of the way there. I also need to smelt up a whole bunch more copper. So we'll get to that in time. Speaking of storms, don't do it, game.
I don't think the sky was going to respond to my begging, so I picked up the 1 unlit block of soul sand, thinking I probably am going to want to save it, but thankfully, things went my way.
I think we escaped.
Okay, day 20, this is actually really big. I completed my helmet, meaning I have a full desert armor set. Well, minus boots, but we can make it work. Gold armor has a similar benefit. I did a little bit of harvesting of some wheat, turning a lot of that into dough and turning that into bread, while I went outside and did a bunch of logging. I also figured out that I can convert sugarcane and the cacti that I've been growing into cactus juice, which will provide me with much greater hydration and some actual water saturation. So that's super important. I kept watching the storm, just waiting for a tornado to drop on my head, smelting up some glass, making a few bottles, and then smelting those up to make purified water, and then converting that into cactus juice. It's a slow process because I can't touch any of these things while they're smelting, but eventually I had a few actually good drinks.
Oh, but it gives the bottle back. Okay, good to know. Good to know. Let's go. First major outing in like ever. How far can I get?
With a nearly full set of desert armor, I was able to walk all the way over to this pyramid. It might not feel like much. It's maybe 150 blocks, but it's the furthest I've been able to head away from my little puddle yet, and it felt like a massive accomplishment. The bottom floor of this is just a huge maze filled with soul sand torches, cobwebs, and a few chests with some decent loot. The redstone torches seemed suspicious, so I made sure to hold on to all of them, digging through the walls every now and then because this is still Minecraft and no maze can contain me. I found my way to the start and doubled back, finding a few crawl spaces, some skulls hidden everywhere in totally not ominous fashion, and eventually just giving up and digging up as I couldn't find the staircase, heading into a massive treasure room and the back of a redstone powered door, which now I know what all those redstone torches were for. I harvested everything up, getting jumped by a skeleton in here who blacked out 2 of my body parts. If I had gotten hit even one more time, I would have been dead. I was also freezing, so I headed down, sleeping inside the tunnel I had made, and then making my way back up to the wall, realizing I had made the best possible choice as there was a wither skeleton in here that I had to kill. I took no chances, killing it by bowing it down, wasting whatever few arrows I had, then making my way into the treasure room. I found the way I was supposed to get up here, heading back up and being jumped by a few mobs, having to block off the door while healing myself with herbs and finally being able to enjoy the spoils. Yo, let's go! And that's just one chest.
Books are just not enchanted. This is so wild. Flesh jerky. Diamond. Please be more than one. Please be more than one.
With an iron pick, I'm able to mine up the raw gold blocks right here inside this nether portal, maybe? Having to deal with the fact that the room is pretty hot. I'm mining up the lapis ore and what other glazed terracotta I could find, randomly getting some potion vex that I don't know where they came from. I mean, I definitely feel lucky, even if I don't know why. Dealing with a few husks on the outer wall and then heading up to the capstone of the pyramid to pick up all of the gold and the glazed terracotta. And just look at everything I'm walking away with.
Oh my god, that's so much gold! We are 1 diamond away from not having to worry about weather anymore. Oh my god, that's huge. Absolutely huge. You're right, I feel lucky.
Not wanting to leave anything behind, I made sure to grab all of the redstone components for the door because I don't know what there would be useful, as well as converting all of the cobwebs into string and picking up any flowers I could. I had to wait until night to be able to actually make my run over, but there was a ton of mobs here and I needed to be really careful. Sprinting my way home, but accidentally waking the worm in the process and having to just very carefully hope that it wasn't going to come for me.
Absolute game changer. That's a problem for tomorrow.
Huge! Huge! The following morning, I had to clear out a few husks and other mobs, and it turns out the TNT zombies, they burn still, dropping dynamite in their wake, which I think I can use for something in the future.
Interesting. Definitely gonna hold on to that. All right, time to de-loot.
I took the Spore Blossom from that top treasure room, adding it inside the cave, finally being able to break the gold block that's been sitting in here since day 3. Half a dozen gold blocks in my inventory, and those tonics are starting to look a lot cheaper than I originally thought they were. The biggest part there is just going to be crafting those all up, but for right now, herbs is working well. I took all of the unstackable items, putting them in the barrel right here, including the ones that I really only had one version of, taking all the blank enchanted books and stashing those away in a chest, thinking that they might come in handy for whenever I want to make an enchanting area. Leather is at a premium, and I can't afford to use any of that for crafting until I can potentially take all of these horse armors and saddles and break them down into their component parts. Took a while to organize all of the different treasures that I had collected because realistically, I was just barely surviving and I had no concept of storage to work with, heading down to the actual bunker to drop some of the most valuable components off here so they would be safe from tornadoes or other potential disasters. I set some logs to get smelted up into charcoal so I'd be able to have a more reliable fuel, did some harvesting of all of the water plants outside, made myself a second furnace so I could start cooking up 4 full rotten leather chunks to have a lot more leather on hand for armor repairs and replacements, and then later in the night actually ventured out again, trying to get a few more cacti that I'd be able to grow inside the walls, as I'd used my full supply to make the cactus use from my previous venture out. I didn't go too far, but it felt good to be able to finally leave this base, returning back and chopping trees into the evening, harvesting all of the sugarcane and making a space where I could harvest and collect cacti so I could keep working on a better hydration source. It started getting a little too cold into the evening, so I headed inside, picked up my leather, crafted all of my copper down into its block form, set a little bit of cocoa beans to grow on the few jungle logs I still had, and headed down into the workshop to call it a night. The following morning, I headed back up to the surface, and it was nice to finally not have mobs meeting me at the cave entrance for once. I was able to stand on top of the wall, sniping a few enemies from a distance, but ran out of arrows, so I had to deal with a few more manually. And it was about here that I figured out that holding a soul torch provides the same benefit as standing next to a soul fire. Well, about half as good, but it's enough that I'm going to be able to venture out even further in a new direction into the sand. I did do a little bit of work to finish the pattern of the wall into the scoria section, dropping down a chest and banking all of my building materials, instead turning the tent into my sort of gatehouse entrance for the base. There's a few mobs that had crowded around that I needed to take out, catching a few arrows into the skull in process, and that always takes a little bit of extra time to heal. I made myself a few spare tonics, recouping the ones I had used, and headed out, this time moving in a somewhat western direction, seeing a few other structures in the distance and finding a few other oddities in the sand. I tried mining up the redstone here, but a stone shovel doesn't cut it, so I'm thinking maybe iron's required. I'll come back to that later, but I wasn't alone here in the desert for once.
Oh, hello. Gunpowder. Huge. Rice is also huge. Sand is worthless to me, my friends. I don't need that. I have nothing but sand.
That gunpowder, great, but the rice is actually what I'm most excited about. It's gonna allow me to make a bunch of different food dishes, all of which are way better than just eating bread and will allow me to actually survive and thrive here. I headed up into the ruins, breaking down the pots, mainly for the bricks, so I could use it for some aesthetic building later, jumping over the dunes and through the more rocky, sandy areas of the map, really hoping that all of this isn't going to set off a sandworm. There was a ravine that actually broke into the surface, revealing a dripstone cave underneath, and heading down here had a whole lot of resources that were too tempting to pass up. I used a water bucket to descend down into the cave itself, mining a whole bunch of iron by soul flame light, picking up a bunch of andesite and copper as well so I could keep getting into create to be able to start automating some resource creation. And that's when I was told I wasn't welcome here. Oh my god. Those attacks are crazy damage, so I ran to the water, swimming up to just put some distance between each other, realizing that it was dark up on the surface, and instead of trying to venture out and find somewhere else safe, just dug into the wall and slept here. I ascended out of the cave the following morning, getting back up into the harsh sunlight and thankfully not being jumped the second I could be seen from a distance. We're just focusing on moving. I'm trying to cover ground and explore because I can finally do that. If I get in any fights, I risk breaking my armor, which means I'm not protected from the heat and I will once again die of a heat stroke. So an important part of that is also not stepping on a cactus, which is something that I failed to not do several times. While looking around, I saw several other deep chasms here, a lot of dripstone caves underneath the desert. I'm thinking this is basically where all the moisture has gone and collected itself, but the fact that several of them are perfectly circular makes me worried about what it is that's burrowing these caves and the fact that they might not be totally naturally generated. As I kept working my way through the rockier section of the desert, I made my way back to a more sandy area, passing by an empty well, and then crusting over the hill, seeing another oasis in the distance.
Oh, I have a rose bush already. Okay. Never mind. Turtle! Hello, turtle. We have above turtle and now below turtle. Well, we have water turtle.
This specific oasis was more moss than dirt, so I couldn't really grab a lot of stuff, but there was a bit of sugarcane here, which would be nice, and a suspicious sand at the bottom of the well. I made a mental note to come back here later, smashing whatever pots I could find and just continuing to push out to the west. There was the potential of a companion along the way, which I was really excited to potentially get.
Oh, if I can tame a camel. Do I have a saddle?
But as I'm thinking about pets, I should have been more worried about the sky, hearing thunder behind me and realizing that the weather had followed me.
Don't move. I forgot to bring the saddle. Okay, we will come back for the camel. That's heading that way, so we're safe, I think.
I dug my way into a covered well just to protect myself from the tornado. Unfortunately, it had no water in it, so I broke my ankles along the way. There wasn't much down there, so I climbed my way back out with a bucket, heading in a northwestern direction, which kind of worked in parallel to the storm, so I had to be careful there.
I get the feeling that that's following me.
If it started to make a turn in my direction, I'd probably die. But it was getting late, so I dug into the mountain here, making a small culvert, having to use a bucket of water to clear out some of the quicksand that I found waiting for me. The next morning, I dug my way out of my hidey hole, continuing on my northwestern journey, finding another ruined structure of sandstone in the distance, and this one is actually a husk spawner. But like with everything else in this pack, it's a little bit more difficult than you might expect.
Oh, that hurts. Worth it though. Still just enchanted book. Enchanted book. I found the saddle though.
But now that I didn't have a tornado in the distance hunting me down, I headed over towards a few four-legged potential friends to try to see if I could persuade them to come home with me.
There you are. There you are, even closer. Do I need to feed you cactus first? Do I have any cactus on me? I don't. How can we become friends? What is this? Naturalists. Untamed wilds. Camel. I'm checking something. Maybe you'll help me. Hello? Oh. Maybe not. Okay. I get the hint. I know when I'm not wanted.
Since the camels weren't looking to make friends, I continued finding something else that was also not very friendly.
Well, this feels like lore. Maybe?
And then came across a patch of roadrunners, and I was conflicted.
Thing is, I don't know if they're gonna hurt me. And I can't heal. Okay, we're just gonna do this. That's potentially stupid, but whatever. I need feathers. Perfect. What are you? I hate that. I hate that so much.
There were a few plants right here that looked pretty important. I broke them down, finding out they were sun ferns, and this is actually a huge deal, but we'll get to why in a little bit. But at this point, I had ventured out far enough. I was out of tonics and it was getting late. I figured it was time to head home. The only problem is there was no way I was gonna get back before dark, so I started running, accidentally upsetting the sandworm and having to slow to an absolute crawl, actually costing me more time than if I had just taken my time. So instead, I had to dig into a nearby sand dune, blocking it off with sandstone and sleeping in a 1x2 hole. I practically buried myself alive. And jumping back out of my grave? Yeah, that made the desert mad too. At this point, I was actually pretty close to home. The only problem is this mountain had been devastated by a tornado, so it required a lot of jumping up and down multiple different layers to be able to make it. So I thought maybe give the worm a little bit of time, just mine some coal in the hill here and hope that it would go burrow its way somewhere else.
Oh my god. Did a real number here. I thought maybe this was like a rendering glitch on the map. I didn't realize that this was actually just all stone. It's really good to know though. This will be useful. Where are we? What's this biome? Desert dunes.
Now back near where I recognized, I made a mental note of the tower that was just beyond the pyramid I had visited a while ago. I should probably check that out sooner rather than later. Heading over the hill, digging a little bit of sand so it would all fall and be nice and flush, and making my way back into the camp, having to spend a decent bit of time de-looting everything I had. Firstly, cooking up all of the rotten flesh to make more leather, and then dropping off all of the different treasure items and some of the greenery that I had collected to both work on improving the visuals of this space, but also having to do quite a bit in figuring out where to put everything, as I hadn't had a lot of stuff. I haven't even left this puddle 6 days ago, so I don't really have space for all of the storage, and I'm just kind of trying to make do. But in researching all of the items I had collected, I realized how big of a deal those sun ferns were.
Heat resistance. Oh, that's huge. Warm string. Heating effect. Okay, so that doesn't help me for the string side of things, but it can let me make potions of heat resistance. Okay, this is important stuff. We should probably keep it down here and grow it down here, so we don't have to worry about anything happening down here. Completely random find and potentially massive.
Keeping on the trend of random plant finds that would actually end up being game changers, I headed out making a small patch of shallow water that I could turn into cropland for the rice, bone mealing the first one of them just to get a few more rice plants, and then smelting up all of the iron heading into the night so I could just chop some trees. The following morning, I finished placing all of the plants that I had collected from the different desert biomes, just adding a little bit of biodiversity to this space, making it feel more like a place that I could actually survive instead of a place where I was just hiding from all the zombies. It still very much is that, and I still need to be very careful at all of the fences for whatever mobs would be looking my way, but now I can finally protect my turtle friends and myself. Clearing out a few husks at the door, and once the furnace was safe to touch, well, even before it, but once it was actually safe to touch, switching out the metal inside and setting more things to cook. And speaking of cooking, I'm really tired of just eating bread. We'll never get onions either. Carrots we might be able to find. Onions maybe. Mushrooms is possible too, maybe. Salmon roll? Okay, if we can fish. We can fish. We can make sushi. We can make sushi. We can make sushi. We have a plan. With things on the surface actually being in a decently good spot, I headed into the cave and then down underground. I want to expand out the room down here to turn it into a proper workshop space. Not only to protect some of my most valuable items, but also a space where I could do a lot of the create work here, as any of that being at risk of danger and damage from a tornado would be devastating to my overall morale. Not gonna lie, if I made a bunch of brass stuff and then had it sucked into the sky, I'd probably quit. I got the room to be decently square, slightly rectangle, but you probably won't notice the asymmetry, getting the bamboo along the backside and then making a whole bunch more moss so I could complete that the whole way through. Doing a nice sandstone floor to remind me what biome I'm in, as if the walls wouldn't be a bit of a dead giveaway. But as that was done, I headed back up to the surface, as I was pretty sure the gold I had set up to be smelted was finally finished. I crafted that down into blocks, having to deal with a little bit of freezing damage. Okay, maybe a lot of freezing damage. I almost froze to death in my house with no mobs around. Oh, this pack is punishing. All right, day 28, and I'm not gonna lie, the first line of my notes for this day is just create hell. I'm guessing you would think that that means I'm potentially going to the nether, but no, it's me trying to remember this mod. Despite including it in almost every pack that I do, despite really loving it and how it integrates with a lot of vanilla Minecraft mechanics, create is a mod that I am just not good at. And anytime you see me using it, it is a struggle every step of the way. Once I made all the casings and cog wheels, that is the very beginning of any sort of create setup, the next thing I needed to figure out was how I was gonna power it all. I went for a large water wheel, as it would give me a lot more stress to potentially work with, and God knows I need more stress in my life right now. Digging into one of the walls and wanting the water wheel itself to be visible and interactable with in the whole space, but I'm gonna hide all of the gears on the other side, just focusing on the output, so visually the workshop looks nice and clean and the machines just kind of work. I put down some sandstone stairs around the crafting table that I could set up an infinite water source inside the stairs themselves, using the spares to just get into the room easier. As far as holding the water back, that's a ton of trapdoors. I set up storage and smelting and crafted up my press that I'm going to use to be able to make a whole bunch of other things. Setting up a whole line of trapdoors to hold back the water so that I could just have the tiniest bit of it flowing across the water wheel itself. Once all of that was done and I had harnessed hydraulics, I had a headache. Starting to set up all of the gears to be able to get faster speeds, and you know how I said I wanted to hide all of that? First, I needed to figure out just exactly how many exchanges I could even support given the machinery that I was about to put onto this thing. Then I decided to actually dig behind the water wheel and place everything where it belongs. This way, I had an idea how big of a space I needed to excavate so I could waste less of my own time. All that to get overstressed. Are you kidding me? Since I had overdone it, I went back, broke a few things down, reduced by a few speeds, and finally set up a proper press. And I'm not gonna lie, at this point I was basically mad, so I just reorganized the room. You ever be so upset that you just clean or reorganize a room, move everything around? That was the mood I was in at this point. But once I did finally get the iron ingots down onto the depot, having the press, converting all of those into plates, I did start to feel like I have actually done something correct, and things were finally coming together. I made 4 plates, which I was then able to turn into a fan, because I'm going to use that both in combination with fire and soul fire to do a couple different operations on a few different resources that are going to be essential for me moving forward. The first thing I researched was how I could get diamonds from any sort of create operation, because at this point there was another storm raging overhead, and I was terrified that the second I went up to the surface, half of my base would be destroyed again, and I'd be back to square one all over again. If I could get myself all the way up to grinding wheels, sure, I can break down the diamond horse armor that I have, but that's a ways away for me to be able to do it. So instead, I turned my attention on getting iron and brass figured out, braving my way upstairs to look around and see where the storm was. And it was, thankfully, just on the other side of the hill, but heading in the opposite direction. Not wanting to push my luck, I had a quick nap inside the cave and headed back out the following morning to harvest crops, chopping up all of the rice into the actual edible version of rice, using some of that to replant. And this was right after I released the Better Minecraft video, where I was told that if you put ropes above tomato plants, they would grow up the rope, basically doubling or tripling your yield per plant. So I was really excited to put that to use. I headed out to harvest the cacti so that I could convert that into more cactus juice for a better water source, and I just became Old Man Yells at Cloud.
Don't do it. Please don't do it. It's gonna do it. And it's gonna do it right on top of me. Move. Okay, that's amazing. It does grow up the ropes. If any of that survives, that'll be wonderful to know.
Not wanting to let that storm completely derail my progress, I just wanted to push forward, looking into what I would need to do to make blaze rods, and a major step in that is getting towards a basin and trying to set up some copper plates so I can start working towards pipes. That's easy enough. You just take some copper and you get it bonked on the press. Craft that up with a few copper ingots and you have some pipes. Take it a little bit further, you can craft it up with a barrel to be able to make the fluid tanks to actually hold everything together. But after all that is where you start to hit a problem. Spouts require dried kelp. And if you didn't notice, we're in an infinite desert. There is no ocean to be seen, but there is a way to find it.
Oh. Okay, so we need to find a village, or else we won't ever be able to make what we need for this. All right, time for another adventure, I guess.
Having hit a hard wall that I'm not going to be able to solve without going out on another expedition, it's time to, well, prepare for that. I smelted up a whole bunch of sand so I could start thinking about making myself more purified water bottles that could make me more cactus juice. There were also a few straggler mobs around the fence that I needed to take out, peeking around corners to be able to shoot whatever skeletons before they could shoot me. The problem with the water bottles is they smelt one at a time, and I can't open the furnace in between each of them to replace it, so I was going to commit.
Oh, this is a potentially really big investment.
That stress you hear, that is me committing most of the iron that I have into making a few hoppers. Now that might not sound like a lot. It might sound really underwhelming, but I only have about 15 iron to my name, and committing 2/3 of that to automate water production is a risk. If I don't pay attention to it or don't replace the resources, I'm gonna run out of the ability to make iron tools. So I need to be careful here, heading down into the workshop and setting up an automated furnace that would cycle through all of the water bottles, sucking out the purified ones, allowing me to do all of that without burning my hands on the furnace as it worked. The following morning, that decision was already haunting me.
I can't afford to make that right now. That's too expensive. That would leave me with no iron.
I can't just commit my last bit of iron to making a cooking pot. So instead, we're gonna have to stay with low saturation foods. So since I can't do anything about food, I'm gonna focus on hydration. I harvested up a whole bunch of cacti, using that to craft up cactus juice, then turning my attention towards healing, using a lot of the bone meal I had to make whatever seeds and flowers I could get for more healing herbs. I'm just running back and forth, getting whatever I can from wherever I can around the base, actually taking a little bit of time, and this might upset some people, killing a few of the turtles that are in my pond just so they wouldn't keep blocking my way in towards the door. I'm petty like that. I had a few bits of flint that I could craft up into flint blocks that I kept breaking down, shoveling, trying to get some more flint, which I could then hone on stones to be able to craft up a few arrows for myself. I harvested the cocoa bean and then the cacti again, and it was just a lot of chores to get ready for another venture outward. But just as I was finishing up, I bumped into a cactus one too many times.
Oh, come on.
Crafting up a new pair of boots and a final few jars of cactus juice, I took a quick nap in my sleeping bag and then headed out the following morning on my next expedition. And it was immediately profitable.
Oh, there it is. Okay. There's diamonds. There's diamonds right here. I just need to figure out how to use these blocks, and we have diamonds. We still need to make other progress though, so we're gonna keep going for a while. What followed next is a long and slow walk out into the desert. I decided to go to the same direction that I had been previously. Yes, that means the first few hundred blocks aren't guaranteed to have anything in them because I've grabbed anything that's potentially useful, but it's also terrain I understand, and I had a feeling if I kept pushing in this direction, maybe I would cover enough ground to find someone else surviving in these sands. I passed a few oases, passed a few ruins, killed a few roadrunners along the way, but after I'd gone about 1.5 times out as far as I had done before, I saw some buildings in the fog. Village. That's gold.
Camel. Ooh, what are you?
Hunter.
This village is the first non-aggressive sign of life I've seen in almost 31 days. So I immediately started by stealing their bell and seeing what else valuable was sitting around. There's a few villagers trapped inside the farm. There's one of my mods, and also is interested in bees for some reason in the world.
Oh. Oh. Oh, hi, Syl. Of course it's you.
I tried crafting up the table I needed to trade for kelp, but there was a small mistake. But a little bit of red dye from the backyard of one of the villagers and grabbing a few of the beetroots and other crops from the one crop plot in here is going to greatly expand my dietary options.
Oh, those are huge.
Beetroots, melon.
It's actually really good, and there's a lot of wheat here to steal.
By the way, if you're wondering why all the villagers are named like that, they're named after my patrons, Twitch subs, and YouTube channel members. If you'd like to potentially see yourself in a future video, there's the join button down there or a link to Patreon, which is the best place to support me. But once I was able to craft up the requisite workstation and convince somebody to take the job, that was only half of the problem. Unfortunately, it was late enough into the night that villagers would no longer take up jobs, but still too early for me to sleep, so I just barricaded myself inside a house, getting a blue moon, which would make me lucky. Unfortunately, there's no way for me to actually leverage that, so I just wandered around the village for a little while until it was finally safe enough for me to go to sleep.
Sorry, kid. We need to sleep.
The following morning, I immediately left the house to help defend the village. Right now, the mobs are all focused on me, but just given how deadly they are, if any of them attacked any of the villagers, this could all go bad really quickly. I let the iron golem do a good chunk of the work, also because I didn't want to risk potentially damaging that iron golem and getting obliterated in one hit. I found a chicken in this village, and I have not seen a living animal at all, so I stuck them in a hole to save them for later, thinking maybe I can take them home, taking another look at the trades and deciding it's time to just commit, trading in a few of the bottles that I have and committing to the long and arduous task of smelting up a bunch more sand to get a bunch more glass to craft into a bunch more bottles to go through all the trades. I can't stand anywhere near the furnace while it's running, so I'm just chilling out in the well of this village, definitely not causing any long-term damage, finding the camel wandering around near the outside of this space, throwing a saddle on them and making a friend. Yes, I have a camel.
Honestly, we're taking them. We're keeping them.
While I waited for everything to happen, I headed over and stole the last bit of flowers behind this one house, realizing I should probably take advantage of the other now unemployed villagers here and making a Fletcher. This would allow me to trade sticks and trade 4 arrows. And considering how powerful ranged combat is, I kind of want some of that. So I'm gonna want to get a few arrows to my name. I bought up several stacks trying to secure Syl in a hole somewhere to keep them safe. They just wandered off. They weren't having it. Crafting up a whole bunch of bottles and then trading into Wonder here.
Perfect. Please have the trade I need.
No!
Shoot. 1, level 2, level 3. So there's more than just this one trade.
Considering they didn't have the trade I want, it was time to unemploy them, making a hole in the corner and using a little bit of water to help navigate them over towards it so they wouldn't claim the workstation when I went to reuse it. A nitwit jumped in there as well, so at least they won't be lonely together.
Sorry, friends.
Putting down to the workstation and attempting to find another trader. I knew I'm gonna need a bunch more bottles to get this working, but since it's later into the night, the furnace is actually keeping me warm, so it's working nicely. So that was useful. I was ready to trade in a whole bunch of sugar, but it turns out there's a lot more level 2 trades also. Gunpowder. Oh.
That might be the cheaper way to do it. We're just gonna have to find some. Because gunpowder's too precious to spend on this. Can I make glowstone dust somehow?
I researched a few ways to potentially make glowstone dust, but that's still pretty expensive. The cheapest option being haunting redstone, but I don't really have a lot of that either. So instead, I just wandered around waiting until I could finally use my bed here.
Nope, let me in. Sorry, Steph, mine.
While I waited for the villagers to restock the following morning, I really want that raw gold block just outside of town, but I'm gonna need to try to find some iron to get it. I headed north, seeing another spot where it once again dropped down into a dripstone cave. I saw a bunch of calcite down there as well. Amethyst is another trade for these villagers, so I'm thinking if I can get that, I'm gonna knock out 2 birds with 1 stone. Unfortunately, this calcite generated as part of this striated stone structure, so it wasn't attached to a geode, but there was some iron ore here that I was able to pick up. Some of it was up in the ceiling, so I pillared up to get it, being very careful that a skeleton wouldn't snipe me off of a pole, sniping out, killing a few zombies at range in the process, and realizing that there was a geode down here as well, actually. So I dug into that, getting into the actual center of it, torching it up so it would be safe, and then started to mine up amethyst blocks. I can break these down on a cutting board, so that's just awesome. I just needed to be careful because I used up my entire pickaxe's worth of durability and had to craft down an iron pickaxe from 3 of the remaining refined iron ingots I had. With that in hand, I headed down the other branch of the cave, as this one was a little bit more tame than some of the other underground expeditions I had done recently, grabbing a bit more iron, some redstone, and a few other supplies. I'm breaking all the soul torches behind me so I can maintain those because they're super valuable, but once the dynamite zombies started spawning, I got the hint.
Oh my, they're throwing explosions at me. Okay, time to sleep. Move. No, let me sleep. My bed. I don't have any tonics. I need to sleep.
Okay, look, I'm just gonna play all of day 34. I'm just gonna let the live VO happen. You need to watch this as it happened.
The storm scares me. Come on, quick, quick. Come on, please have the kelp. No, you don't have the kelp trade. Okay. It's really in both of our best interests, Hector, if you give me the trade I need so we can leave. Sugar, I can trade you. There's the camel. My friend, we have to go. Now.
I jumped on the camel and just ran. Not fastest. You think they would move a little bit quicker with almost guaranteed death by tornado behind us, but they took their sweet time. Thankfully, we were no longer in the tornado's path. I found a few more diamond chunks along the way, making sure to mark all of them on my map, doing the long, slow, arduous task of walking this camel back over towards home. The advantage to this, however, is that the camel seems immune to triggering the worm. So riding on them, I'm able to jump and run and sprint, and nothing is alerting the sandworm below. So I have a much more reliable and consistent way to travel. Enough so that I was able to make the trip between the village and my home base in a single day. And after having to break down a portion of the wall to get my new friend inside, we were finally home safe.
Home sweet home. There you go. You just chill, my friend. Good to be back. That was intense, but I think it's gone amazingly.
Not wanting to risk any potential loss of the resource I just spent way too much to earn, I planted down the kelp and bone mealed it immediately, securing a bunch of extras in my inventory, taking a quick rest to avoid any freezing damage. But after a quick sleep, both in-game and IRL, I returned the following morning, now understanding a bit more about those resource sand blocks that I had been seeing around the world. Turns out I can craft a sieve to be able to extract the resources from the sandy chunks that they drop. It's gonna require a bit of gold, but I'm actually pretty gold rich at this point, so that's good for me. Heading out of the cave though, my camel was nowhere to be seen. I was running and jumping around trying to find my ride, and in doing so woke the worm who was just rumbling around underneath me. But it was very dude where's my camel moment, with having no idea where they had wandered off to. It took me about 3 or 4 minutes before I finally saw them starting to climb their way up the nearby mountain. Jumping on and driving them back over towards the entrance, taking the sieve that I had just crafted and trying to use it on the block, realizing instead I needed to make an iron shovel to mine the blocks up first to get these sandy chunks, which I can then craft with the sieve to get the resources. I rode the camel over towards the diamonds in the distance, collecting the one that I found that was actually a lot closer than the ones I had marked on the map, going for the larger expedition out there, having 3 in my pocket when I was heading home. And, well, this place seems to be the main spot for wandering traders as they pass by my base.
Oh, hello. What do we have? Acacia blossom. Green dye I can get. Oak saplings I have. I mean, you know what, Danny? I'll buy a couple lily pads off of you. Why not? Thanks. I'm sorry. I need a lead.
Hey, look, at least I let the wandering trader live. Mog Swamp is rubbing off on me. What can I say? I headed back towards home using the lead I had just acquired to secure the camel to the tent near the gatehouse. Heading back inside and using the sieve to craft down the sandy chunks into their diamond variants. And this is a game changer.
This is huge. Okay, gold, 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 lapis redstone. How do I craft the weather items?
Now that I had all the base materials, the only thing left to do was actually craft these things, and it's going to require a couple different steps. I headed down into the workshop underground to grab some cobblestone and coal to make myself yet another furnace, as my main one is used for water purifying right now, crafting up a bunch of iron bars, and then having to set up haunting. I took a single soul sand block and put it down in front of the fan here, trying to look on ways to get quartz, and you can get that by haunting a piece of amethyst with soul flame in front of a fan. Don't ask me how, you're haunting it. So quartz is apparently just amethyst but spooky. Once I had all the resources that would allow me to craft the comparators, I needed a whole bunch of copper and other supplies. So I headed up to the upper area, grabbing the copper blocks I had been storing off for later, hanging the bell that I stole from the village just to have a bell here, because who wouldn't want to have a bell? Crafting up some redstone blocks, smelting up some additional copper, and then making some smooth stone so I could start crafting up comparators.
Oh, this is so exciting. This is so exciting. My base is finally going to be safe.
That meant making a few redstone torches, doing that little final bit of crafting, and after all of that, I had one weather item. So it's time to do the whole process over again, realizing that don't stand near the haunting, it just kind of makes you blind. So it's somewhat similar to being shot in the face. Who knew? I broke down all the bamboo to make myself the sticks needed for additional torches and sped through the process the second time around, finally crafting up a weather deflector, heading up to the surface and immediately placing it on top of the tent right here at my base. With that down, I no longer have to worry about tornadoes at this location. They will just be disbanded, dispelled, and sent off in other directions. That means I can finally truly invest in infrastructure here. It's now no longer temporary as long as I protect that block from any damage. My home was finally secure. My base was finally safe. So now, finally, for the first time, probably an hour in with you watching this video, comment what timestamp it is when I finally put down the weather deflector. I want to know what the final edit is. But I can start to think about long-term base plans because this place can actually survive.
I think we've now officially finally hit the point of surviving in this world, or at least having enough where we don't need to worry about survival every day. We have a workshop, we can start getting everything we need there. We have our interior, like safer space. We have a place where we can honestly just relax. This pond is wonderful. We've got crops, we've got trees, we have industry, and it's all protected now. This is huge. Now we can actually focus on thriving a bit.
I turned the back area near one of the trees here into a farm plot, planting the beetroots right next to the rice that I have here so I can start making multiple different courses of food. It was about here also that I realized some of the things I'd been carrying around weren't just normal pieces of paper.
Found this while getting lost in the trails. It should be useful to me later. Wait, what? I thought that was just a piece of paper. Interesting.
So you mean to tell me there's mysteries and lore in a Legundo video? Say it ain't so. But I'm putting down decorative items now. I can afford to do that. And it's also time to evaluate and look at all of the storage that I have set up here because we're about to really balloon the number of items we have to our name. Part of that involves upgrading the backpack. I have needed to, for a while, upgrade this thing to both iron and then immediately to gold. The first of which was by far rarer for me. But doing so was an immediate benefit at almost double the size. I spent some time reorganizing all of that. I replanted all of the water plants inside the cave and then headed down to the workshop to take a much deserved rest. The following day, we're back into create hell, just bear with me. Here's everything we had to do. First, it was taking all of the water bottles and kelp, smelting all of that up to purify and dry respectively, making a copper casing, breaking down all of the farm and press, using a copper casing and the kelp to craft up the pump that I need, then starting to set up and figure out what I could do with water and purified water in all of the different stages here. I put the pump down in place, making a whole new set of gears and cogs that I could start somehow potentially pumping the water from the basin into the actual spout. That's going to require a whole bunch more gears and power, moving all of it over from the other side because I'm not quite ready to commit to making another water wheel, but I'm also really out of wood to be able to do that. So I headed up to the surface, replanted all of my beetroot, and then just chopped trees for a good portion of the day while dealing with husks outside. Once that was done, I put a second large water wheel on top of the first one. This will double my stress capacity. It won't make things faster, but it will hopefully allow me to power both of these machines at once. Then it was time to dive down into the gears that make this all work, taking a shaft and carrying it all the way across the room to transfer power over here to the pumps. I was actually short a few pieces of andesite alloy, so it's time to get rid of that andesite in the middle of the room, making a small diorama of diorite, some sandstone stairs, and one of the raw gold blocks, which I think I can spare. Once that was done, I crafted up the final few cogs and I was actually able to get everything working.
Yo, okay.
I needed to make myself one more depot, but that was probably the most successful create day I've had in a long time. The next morning, we need to address the fact that I'm out of healing herbs, and I'm gonna keep pronouncing herbs differently every time just to keep you on your toes. I took care of all of the crops outside before getting a little bit of wood and making myself a composter, using a lot of the cacti and sugarcane that I have to turn that into bone meal, then making a set of shears and breaking down all of the leaves to get even more. I used all of that on the grass to get myself a bunch of seeds and flowers, crafting that into herbs, dealing with a few zombies that were chasing me outside the walls, and then it was time to do a little bit of science.
Oh. Okay, so that works.
Now knowing I can light things without gunpowder, I went over towards the farm to take care of things, but just as it started to roll into night...
Not okay.
All right, we have a problem. Firstly, I need to make it through the night, which means I need to break down all of the soul fire so I won't freeze to death. I set up the dispenser with a lighter on it, thinking, let's try to make myself a block of netherrack, heading down into the underground and trying to haunt some cobblestone, turning that into blackstone, which I could go through a multi-stage process, dumping lava in it to turn it to netherrack. The only problem is I don't have any of that, so instead, I just headed back up to the surface, putting a log down in that place. Now, it did burn the trapdoors surrounding it, but at least I was able to keep myself warm while trying to defend the walls with archery from the crawling zombies. The only problem is the fire started to spread. If I put the fire out, I start freezing to death. So that's problem A. So I relit the fire because more mobs are coming and I need to protect myself, but they're also starting to group up and push each other up and over the wall. Oh, and the wall is on fire and all of the fences are starting to disappear and the mobs are making their way inside.
No.
So here we are again, living inside the cave as once again, I have been pushed back to my near final bastion of safety, freezing to death, standing next to the brewing stand to just attempt to survive the night. At least this time I have arrows, so I can shoot all the mobs as they're making their way in, occasionally diving into the water to do a little bit of fighting, but blocking everything up with amethyst going into the next morning, where I got the notification that the blood moon was finally over, but my troubles were just beginning.
No, the camel! No, the camel!
Proving once again that when it comes to Minecraft, I should not be trusted with the care of any four-legged creature. I had to deal with quite a few zombies that had made their way into the water. Thankfully, they're all focused on me, and they're kind of floating, so they're somewhat easy to kill, and they're not summoning any of their friends. Once I had dealt with all of that, I had to go out and try to deal with the massive flaming hole in my wall, getting shot in the face a few times in the process, having the whole tent just be totally gone.
Oh my god. The camel. At least the weather deflector's okay. That would have been devastating.
I grabbed whatever blocks I had in my inventory and made the ugliest patch I could for the wall, but at least it is once again a wall, not a hallway. I did, though, have another backpack, so that in and of itself, it's nice. I wouldn't have traded the camel's life for it, though, or at least I can't say that on video. I can't say that part out loud. I headed back into the cave to drop off a lot of the supplies that I had collected from all of the mobs. Bones for bone meal is at least good, if, again, not worth the trade. All of the wood, by the way, that I used to patch the hole, that's all burnt now, too, so I don't know exactly what to do with it, but it doesn't match the aesthetic of the rest of the build, so we're gonna break it down and replace it all with more oak. I did, however, now since the tent is gone, now require a new gatehouse for the structure. So I started building one out of slightly less flammable materials, mainly using sandstone to lock everything in place, and then also figuring with how easy it is for the zombies to climb up and over the wall, maybe I should make it a little bit higher. I grabbed the glazed terracotta from the top of the pyramid that I had collected a few days ago and used that to decorate around the very front of the base, quickly sleeping as I was starting to freeze to death, moving the weather deflector inside the bottom of the lake, now adding fire to one of the threats that it's constantly facing.
What was that?
With security now back on the table, I turned back to farming, dealing with all of the beetroot that I had collected from the village and realizing that that's going to allow me to level up my food game massively.
Oh, hold up. That's huge. Wait, that's huge. Beetroot is finally good.
Look, I'm sorry, Viking, beetroot sucks. Anyway, this will allow me to make salads, which will give me regeneration, which is great since natural health is turned off. Instead of only having to rely on herbs to heal, which need me to have a limb damaged in order to consume them, I can just eat this salad and regenerate naturally. So we're gonna want a lot of that, and I started breaking down all of the crops here just to get the bone meal for more. And then I realized that the camel wasn't the only thing that I had lost.
Oh wait, I just realized the turtles are all gone. The blood moon must have kind of killed the last few. That's a bummer. They've been here the whole time.
I took all of the cactus and sugarcane to craft up some more cactus juice so I had good hydration, taking whatever I could spare to make more bone meal to grow more cabbage and beetroot, grabbing a little bit of wheat and seeds from inside, and then going and chopping the cabbage so I could double it up into its leaf form so I could make myself even more. That would help if I didn't just make beetroot soup instead of the salads that I was actually intending to make, but I did get it on the second try, so second try is the charm here. I planted a lot more on the beetroot side of things, crafted up a few more salads, and then returned over towards the gatehouse, wanting to expand out my structure overall. I started building a bridge over this little tunnel right here, stopping a few blocks before connecting to the other side because I don't just want to make a buffet line into the base. Starting to excavate down the sand on this side, thinking I can make a secondary tower and structure over here that could potentially be more defensible than the lake itself. Now, the salads don't allow you to eat them when you're not hungry, so herbs are still probably the best way to heal, but it's nice to have another thing in my back pocket. I dealt with a single skeleton who almost single-handedly jumped up over the wall, fighting them through the little defensive slits that I've made in the gatehouse, and this place is working wonderfully.
Yeah, it does work. Not well, but proof of concept.
I had a quick nap, and then on day 41, we returned back over to excavate the top of the island. Now, here's where we have a problem. The scorpion, not so much, but the witch, if you thought the skeletons were bad. Oh, no.
Can't do that. That's right. I can't do that. Wait. Bee. Beehive. Oh. This is huge. Honey. What can I use honey for? Honey cookies, honey glazed ham. I could make honeyed apples. Hello, bees. Oh wait, the turtles are back. Well, 2 of the turtles are back. I'm just getting all sorts of new friends now. This is wonderful.
The new friends included whatever it is that's constantly rumbling under the ground underneath me, but once I was hungry enough, I finally ate one of the salads, figuring out it recovers about a heart. So it's not awesome, but it's something. I finished excavating out the layer of sand to level out the top of the dune opposite my entrance, working on closing in the top of the structure and building an actual kind of upper level to the gatehouse. After that, I headed down into the workshop to take a look at a few of the create things and see what I could potentially make. Nothing stood out as a major progression point, so I headed back up, making myself a stone cutter with some of my few pieces of iron so I could craft up a lot of the different sandstone variants a lot faster. The following morning, it's time to build. I grabbed all of the sand that I had and started smoothing out the gradient of the different topography right here so I could just have a little bit better of a base structure. Trying to plan out a general shape so I could then use the existing supplies I have to build out the same sandstone and fence wall so that I had consistency across the whole base while still making this side a little bit more fortified. I want the central point with the 2 bases to connect to be a large tower that I could make a upper shooting floor from, so I'd be able to take out mobs from a distance, but also just being able to get up and above and away from any hordes that might be coming in, so it would take far more of them to crawl up to find me instead of just 1 or 2 pushing a kid up over the wall. I'm using the rope that I have to be able to climb up and then investing a whole bunch of wood in order to make this thing look different aesthetically, having a very nice tan contrast amongst the little beige that you see. The whole desert is beige. Everything is beige. I need to find whatever color I can, however I can. But I started taking a few too many skeleton shots late into the night, so I slept inside the gatehouse and then returned back to work the following morning, using the burnt fences as a really nice color contrast, but having not enough, so needing to craft a few over and do an intentional burn. I never thought I'd do something like that, but honestly, I think that's probably the best way to add black wood to Minecraft, so you don't need to make an ebony tree. That would be really cool. Mojang, please give us this. It would be awesome. But once the fences were all charred and ready to go, I completed out all of the decorations on the bridge itself, setting up some 4 posts on all of the walls, taking a whole bunch more wood that I had farmed throughout the day, and making the tower a few blocks taller. I then converted out the rope here for some trapdoors and some ladders on them, just to give different visual ways to bring myself up in altitude. And after dealing with a few mobs around the gatehouse, we were into day 44, where we started the day just dealing with a lot of our food. I'm putting down some additional dirt so that the melons will grow outward, taking care of all of the beetroot and cabbage before deciding to go venture out. My very first encounter with a skeleton broke my shield, so I had to head in and craft up a new one down to less than a quarter stack of iron. That's kind of scary. Taking care of that 1 sniper and a single husk before heading over to go take a look at what is over here in the eastern direction from my base. I found a few more diamond sand chunks, so I got that all set up, finding a structure that was actually a husk spawner. And this one is close enough to my base that I'm gonna wanna preserve it. So instead of breaking the spawner, I broke the structure itself, so it would be well lit up and no mobs would spawn. There's a decent bit of treasure in the chest too. There's a diamond just sitting here. That could have made my life so much easier when I was trying to make that weather machine. I grabbed a little bit of regular cactus so I can make myself more cactus juice, having to craft up another pick because my previous one had broken when breaking the spawner. Then it was time to go check out that tower. I heard a lot of scary sounds inside this thing, so I approach from the back wall, having a few pillager legionaries attack me and rush outside. The first one broke my helmet, so I broke in a shield, a pickaxe, and a helmet all in about 5 minutes. I'm having a very bad day here. I crafted up a replacement, but instead of dealing with the spawner down at the bottom, I just pillared up next to the building, trying to see maybe that there's just treasure at the top and I can circumvent spent the whole challenge. And there's a lot at the top, mind you, including another spawner here that I am very glad I approached from outside. This would almost certainly have killed me if I dug into it. At the very top, you guessed it, another spawner, but this one was exposed to the sky, so it was just light enough that it wasn't spawning anything, and I was able to break it at the great cost of my personal health, just having to spend quite a few herbs to heal. At the top, it was worth it.
Yo. Oh my goodness, a looting 3 sword. That is huge. That's a problem. Really good pants. That's potentially really good.
The only problem we have right now is that there's a tornado in near distance. I have to pillar my way down the tower. There's a ton of mobs here, including baby versions of the Legionnaire that could make their way through a 1 block gap that I need to close. Oh yeah, and I'm freezing to death. I headed up to the near top of the tower, just putting down a couple torches, hoping that and holding one in hand would just barely give me the heat I needed to survive the night. I can't sleep because there's too many monsters nearby, so that's the only way I can make it, just standing up here and hoping for the best. I did spot some lava in the distance, which was worthwhile to make a note of. Digging down the tower as the sun started to rise, grabbing a few of these blocks so they could be really good decorative additions to the base, figuring out that there's a few mobs down on the ground, which is going to cause me a problem as that skeleton has my number. So one of my feet is broken, which means I'm going to take additional fall damage. I have less than my max hearts, I'm out of healing herbs, and the skeleton is sniping me. So I bridged around this structure, out and over off of a cactus, jumping off and making a break for it. I'm slowed because of my feet, so the mobs can just gain on me, but I still need to run and sprint as fast as I can just to try to cover distance. That, however, triggers a new problem.
No. Come on, I just need to get inside. Okay. That was close.
Once I was inside, that was a very eventful day in Minecraft, so I just worked on crops. Farming is easy. Farming is not super dangerous, at least not yet. There might be a way that it is. I really hope I don't find it. I used all of the bone meal that I had to craft myself up a little bit under a dozen herbs, taking a look at all the supplies I had, and actually using one of the backpacks as a larger organizable chest, because you can actually sort those just by middle clicking. As it started to get late, I swam into the cave and took a look at quite a decent bit of food that I have here. Reorganizing all of the treasure, making myself a few buckets because I'm gonna go want to get some of that lava in the morning. Day 46. I first looked and saw what those coins that the Legionnaires had dropped would be useful for. There's a few different villagers that would trade that for different supplies, so I'm gonna wanna carry them around on me in case I run into them. The sword that I had gotten was actually pretty awesome. Both of them were actually pretty awesome for different reasons, so those are my new everyday carry weapons. With a few skeletons taken care of, I headed out over the ravaged lands just opposite my base. First, mining up a whole bunch of coal, then seeing a zombie spawner, an old school zombie spawner just in the wall here, which had been uncovered as all of the sand had been stripped away by a hurricane. I grabbed all of the gunpowder from in the chest, just marking it and leaving it for later, stashing all of the supplies and continuing my adventure over towards the lava. This terrain is wild to see. All of the sand picked up and pulled away, exposing a lot of ore for me, which is great. There's zinc, iron, copper, a lot of things I could use, but the lava that I had spotted from the top of the tower is probably the biggest thing here. I have to quickly throw it in the backpack, which somehow insulates me from the heat, but I'm not gonna complain about that. It is the only way that this is actually probably survivable. I grabbed a whole bunch of sand and dirt from over here on the other side of the hill, which I won't need to watch all the time, making my way into the base via the actual tower and climbing across the bridge over towards the lake, jumping down for a quick nap on a very productive day. Continuing that productivity into day 47, where I'm chopping more trees to get myself a whole bunch more wood, crafting down all of the rotten flesh that I have into over a dozen chunks of leather. That is, once they smelt. But with everything done on the surface, it was time to head down into the workshop and put this lava to use, dumping it all into the basin, which gets pumped into the tank, which heading back up to make myself a quick bit of sandpaper and some coal blocks, and I swear I'm not eating them. That's just what the animation looks like. I was able to make a coal rod, which started the process of turning this into a blaze rod. That requires multiple back and forth between spreading lava on it and then hitting it into the press, but after about 4 cycles of that, you're done.
Let's go. Now I just need to do that 8 more times. 7 more times.
Well, you know how I said done? It's mostly like kind of done. You're started. You will be done eventually, but first you have to eat a whole bunch more coal blocks, do a whole bunch more of the lava spraying, the smashing, the spraying, the smashing, the spraying, the smashing, the spraying, the smashing, the spraying, and then you get another blaze rod. And since I'm in create mode, I did a whole bunch more research into other things that I could do, trying to find renewable ways to get myself other resources. Stone is looking promising, but I'm not 100% sure how to figure it out, because if I can do that, I can make a create-based iron farm. Y'all always yell at me to make one. I never figure it out. I'm not that smart at create. Maybe one day we'll do a create 100 days. And as long as we're on the topic of science, I learned something huge the next morning.
Minor instant health. Oh, this is perfect. This is perfect because I have gold for days.
So while instant health seems interesting, I'm actually gonna go for the glistening version, which is a cold drink, which would give me even additional heat resistance to be able to make my way through the desert much more. I reset the water purification hopper furnace setup, throwing a bunch of water bottles into a barrel on the top and letting that cook. Looking into what I could do with my food options as well, since we're about to level up our drink game, and 2 things stand out here. Kelp rolls would be awesome, but I don't have carrots. Maybe I can get one from a zombie at some point in the future, but for right now, these cabbage wraps could do really good, as you could use beetroot in place of the meat here, and that finally puts that on the table and available to me. That's gonna require a cookpot to make though, so I had to head up to grab the iron that I had smelting. I grabbed a few of the ingredients that I had along the way, just making myself more and different fruits, having to craft up some bamboo planks to try to make a wooden shovel, which you need for the cookpot, but then forgetting, because it had been like 35 days since I'd made a wooden tool, that this isn't how you make them.
Oh, but I need to do that. Oh, no, 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 no. Go away. Go away. I have the thing. Go away.
Once this specific old man was done yelling at a cloud, I did hover by the door, worried that maybe the weather deflector didn't work underwater, before going back down to the workshop and toughening up that wooden block, crafting up the cookpot for myself and heading up towards the surface, because I'm probably gonna need to put it up here so I won't be cooked to death. The following morning, I took care of all of the husks that were around the base, getting a few more rotten chunks, so that's some more leather in the bank, dealing with a few spiders, and then heading over towards the ravaged area just to pick up a whole bunch of coal. I headed over towards the lava pool, grabbing a half a dozen buckets of lava and throwing those into the backpack, drinking myself one of those melon juices and realizing it gives me the bottle back.
Oh, that's huge.
So with that juice on board, I don't need to hold a soul torch in order to survive in the desert now, which means I can finally continue pushing out further and further into the sands. I found a few more of the resource sand chunks, gold, redstone, and emerald specifically, banking all of those in the backpack before finding a small sandstone structure. Digging into it, I figured out that it had 4 gold blocks on the bottom, which is huge for me.
Ooh. There's all the gold I just spent. Wonderful.
Gold is proving to be the most valuable resource I can find. But I'm not stopping at just that, grabbing anything else. Skulls, cookies, water bottles at somebody who is very lost on a sun tanning day. But at this point, I had ventured far enough away from home that I couldn't make it back, so I just climbed up into a tree and slept there. The following morning, I chopped that down, and y'all, it's day 50, and I can finally walk around in this whole world without freaking out, without burning to death. I can push out into the wilds and finally make progress. So I took advantage of it and explored. I know we were just doing a whole bunch of cooking, but I have mutton on me and I am just excited to go out and see what this world has to offer. And what it has to offer is just watch.
Oh my goodness, I did not think about that. I did not think that that would be trapped. I should be used to everything being trapped. Thank goodness I was standing back here, or else that could have been really, really bad. I genuinely don't know what kind of damage explosives do in this pack. Wait a second, that's rabbits. I also had my sound really low because I'm also watching Critical Role right now, and I don't want it to get picked up on my microphone.
Hey, speaking of streaming, I'm still live on my Subathon as I'm recording this voiceover. Chat right now is probably saying hi to you. I don't know if I'll be live when this video comes out, but go to twitch.tv/Legundo and come join because we're going to be doing a lot of cool streaming stuff anyway. But I headed over towards where the rabbits were, slaying them absolutely mercilessly, getting a whole bunch of rabbit hide, but most importantly, raw meat. I crafted up a brush from one of the feathers I had collected and actually used that at the bottom of the well to get myself a few pottery sherds. It's really nice to be able to do and engage with different mechanics. The fact that that gladiator sword has looting on it is huge. It means that a lot of rarer mob drops are things that I can actually rely on having. As I'm continuing to explore, I found another random raw gold block as well as a few emerald blocks, heading my way back towards the base, having done a really massive loop. And that night was a harvest moon. So despite the fact that the worm is rumbling underground, I'm just trying to focus on my crops here, using whatever bone meal I can manage to just increase the yield of everything I can afford to do. Trying to get everything for the salads, the wraps, or any other high density foods that I could grab. I took all of the treasure that I had collected and dumped that out into my valuables chest, getting all of these sand chunks and water bottles sorted, moving all of the sandstone off to the side, and sleeping as I started to freeze. Day 51, I started with a little bit more inventory organizing, just putting everything in place before returning back down to the workshop, dumping all of the lava into its own supply so we could continue on the production of blaze rods, setting all of the different foods to smelt so that could all be good to go. I used the first little bit of lava to actually make myself a magma block because that's going to be able to power the stove really easily, and then started with the totally not eating of coal rods and then smashing and pressing them to make more blaze rods. I'm doing these one at a time so I don't get stuck with all of them in different steps of the process, going back up and now focusing on food, chopping up a whole bunch of lettuce and then taking that magma block and putting the cook pot on top so I can finally start cooking. I threw all of the beetroot and all of the cabbage leaves I could into it, making myself up my first few cabbage rolls. The only problem I have is standing anywhere close to that magma block immediately makes me overheat, so I need to keep my distance. I focused my time on chopping trees, investing 3 of my diamonds into making myself a full diamond axe. My first diamond tool in this world, 51 days in. This has been a challenge. I crafted up a chest to throw all of the food and supplies in here, heading inside, replanting, and then moving all of the food from the chests on the interior out so I can start organizing all of my loot into different areas. Having everything on its own workstation in its own place feels great. Having the magma block here lets me work later into the night, so I'm actually getting more time out of each day. And that productivity just lit a fire under me, metaphorically and actually physically, as I headed out over towards the secondary base area, taking a look at all of the different sandstone walls and working on planning everything out so that none of the walls would have that weird spot where the pattern needed to repeat or was cut off by half, setting up everything in place, well, at least all of the sandstone, before mining out all of the ground, figuring out that there's actually a ravine underneath here that I desperately need to light up, or else mobs are going to be spawning underneath this part of the base. Once that was clear, I headed back up and over, just starting to organize all of the sandstone, everything I had, into a singular backpack so I could easily move it over for more building. And just as I started to go to bed,
oh, storm.
That put me on edge because I burned my hand right away the next morning, forgetting that the furnace was on.
Still running?
The clouds are roaring, the wind is whistling, there are ghosts flying overhead, and I'm not exactly sure what they come from.
What is that?
But this is a straight up thunderstorm, not a tornado that the weather deflector will keep it away. Instead, I need to be careful of just getting struck by lightning. And I don't know what that'll do with the damage mods that I have in this pack. And it turns out, actually, it is also a tornado.
Oh wow, that's really close. Should be safe though. Why am I just so... Is it just this? That magma block does a ton of damage.
With the magma block sorted and now me being able to be safe throughout the rest of the day, I crafted up a diamond shovel to continue upgrading my tools and then just chopped trees, watching the storm keep its distance.
If I had to worry about that, I'd be really concerned right now. Finally, we've made some progress though, which is really, really nice. Probably shouldn't go out mining for resources though while there's a storm right there. Maybe we just stay home for a little bit.
With a whole bunch more oak now in my possession, I was able to extend the fences and the gates up, starting to work on an actual entrance to the gatehouse, or at least a top of it right now, so that I could be safe from all of the elements and potential attacks from above. I'm mainly using wood for the roof, as I'm not going to need to worry about fire here at all, but being extra careful and putting a bit of sandstone in the center, so the lantern that I hung from here has no potential chance of catching flame. From the watchtower, I looked out at all of the mobs overnight and thought, no, we're not dealing with that today. I'm going to sleep.
Oh, you're freaky. And not in a fun way.
Next morning, I'm gonna need more supplies for the second half of the base if I really wanna get that up and running. Specifically dirt and a few other little bits, as well as sand to level out the island. As I headed out to collect all the resources, I was jumped by a trio of skeletons. The first was easy to dispatch. The second had armor and some kind of enchantment on their bow, and me continuously trying to jump crit them woke the worm, so I had to hide around the back of my base. The third was the killing blow on my chest plate, breaking it and exposing me to the heat, which sucked, honestly. I headed inside, first crafting up a desert tunic, which I already had, but now I have a spare, and then a desert chest plate, so I can actually survive the heat. With that done, I headed out, grabbing any blocks of dirt that I could find, and actually just kind of Pac-Manning my way around from one to the other, mining up all the sand blocks in the way as well, making these really weird mole-like tunnels through the whole space, but I kind of need all of the resources, so I'm running with it. I found a few bits of gold while mining out for dirt, heading over to a nearby ruin, grabbing the glazed terracotta and the sandstone bricks as the floor, just so I have more variated blocks to work with. But I accidentally ended up staying out too late, so I had to go and hide inside the pyramid, sleeping there going into day 55, where I picked up the blue glazed terracotta right here, and then figured out that the Legionnaire's pickaxe is strong enough to break obsidian.
Oh.
I mined up the remainder of the portal here. I can't go to the nether in this pack. A, I'd probably just burst into flames, but B, it's disabled. But obsidian is useful in other ways, specifically for an enchanting table. I headed out of the pyramid, searching out for more sand, finding a pit of lava far closer towards home. So that's useful. I'm not gonna have to make as much of a journey. I grabbed a few buckets of it, marked it, threw them off in my backpack, and then just continued grabbing dirt and sand, mining my way back towards home and cleaning up the path to get rid of the dirt on the path here and just using whatever sand I had collected to smooth out the hill leading up towards my tower and close in a few gaps so that my base wasn't floating. With that done, I placed all the dirt down, making 2 5x5 patches where I'd be able to grow crops from, and then taking a bunch of sandstone that I had collected and expanding the wall up a few blocks just to figure things out. I realized the base was actually 1 block too wide, and it had this really awkward place where the 1x1 pattern just would repeat. So I actually shrunk the base by a block just to clear everything up, getting all the fences in place and torching the interior to secure this room. The following morning, I climbed up onto the walls, just jumping from block to block, placing down some additional detail work to expand the wall higher, using some of the blocks from the village that I had robbed just to bring some decoration over here. I put some logs in place to make a secondary floor and a terrace to guard the crops from the sunlight, but also to make an area where I could turn it into an enchanting space, expanding the wall up and through, using some sideways logs to make sure that the fences would leave no gaps leading up to the second floor. That ate up a lot of my wood supply, so I had to head back over towards the lakeside area, chopping trees and harvesting all of my crops just to get myself a bit more food, heading down into the workshop to dump the lava away so I could start making more blaze rods when the blood moon rose.
Oh, come on.
At first, I thought I could wait it out, just stay down here in the workshop, so I kept working, finishing off 1 blaze rod, but I realized if I left the zombies unattended, they would probably crawl together, climb up over the walls, and trap me in the cave again. So I headed out to meet them in the field, immediately regretting my decision.
Nope. I don't like the explodey ones.
But thinking maybe I have a shot here. I have a bucket of lava that I can use. Holding it protects me from the cold of the desert nights, but also serves as an offensive weapon, allowing me to dump lava down on the zombies, except for the ones that can crawl up the walls and up the lava and take me down to a single heart worth of health. I got them into the water where they'd be a little bit easier to trap, having a few spiders follow along their way and starting to freeze before getting back up on the hill and holding lava to warm myself up. And I was right. I should not have left them unattended.
Oh boy. Come on. Burn. Burn. Yes, that's gonna burn. That's fine. I don't care if these fences burn.
And actually, as I was dealing with this, Mrs. Gundo came downstairs, so I had to explain to her just the kinds of things I need to deal with at work.
Yeah, look at all of that.
Those zombies?
Yes. And I don't know what the glowy green ones do. I don't know what those do. And that scares me because they're holding bombs. That's a bomb. So I'm trying to burn them alive with lava, and it's mostly working. It's mostly working too, which is cool. Like, look. Ooh, shoot.
They're burning them before you get out.
I'm not getting out. I'm afraid they're gonna climb up the wall. I'm throwing lava down and hoping for the best. Oh, that worked. That worked. I survived.
So I'd survived the night, and while I didn't get a lot of supplies from all of those fights, mainly because I immolated everything, the few stray skeletons were enough that I could deal with them relying on my shield as long as I continue remaining comfortable that I'm gonna be at 2 hearts pretty often. I relit all of the braziers just to get more soul fire going so I could cool off, letting the healing herbs do their work over time while harvesting all of the water seeds and heading over towards the second half of the structure, having a few pillagers that are actually actually hanging out right outside the window, was able to kill through one of the defensive slits in the wall. With the area fully secured, and me having broken legs apparently, I hydrated and set up the farming plots, putting enough light so that crops will grow, but just kind of letting that go for right now, heading down into the workshop to work on another blaze rod, getting that through the whole process, and starting to get my next one done, but running out of lava a little bit early. My first thought was head back up and maybe go do a little bit more work, but it was both storming and freezing, so I called it a night the next day, focusing on getting myself more herbs, as I was pretty much out, using a lot of bone meal on the grass to break down for seeds and flowers, heading over towards the crop area as well to get myself a bit more food while I was at it, and dealing with a few stray skeletons that had made their way a little too close to the wall, including one with a backpack, which it thankfully dropped. Inside was a ton of bones, which I could turn into a lot of bone meal, which I could turn into more healing herbs, getting myself 40 of them, so I'm going to be able to deal with a few fights along the way. But I did want to research into some of the higher tier elements just to see what else I could potentially heal myself up with. A lot of it requires wool and gold. Thankfully, I kind of have a decent bit of both from fighting spiders as well as collecting other supplies. I'm not going to need it right away though, so the next morning I dealt with the few skeletons and headed out to that nearby lava pool, throwing 4 buckets into a backpack and doing a little bit of experimenting into the ravaged lands, getting a whole bunch of iron from the ores that are exposed because all the sand has been ripped up. There was gold, lapis, even some diamond sand chunks around here that I was able to collect, heading actually down into a cave just to get a bunch more iron as I'm starting to really run low. There weren't a lot of mobs in that path, so I'm doing okay, and I was actually able to stay underground for a reasonable time, grabbing a little bit of redstone on my way back towards home and harvesting up one of these nearby desiccated trees just to see what I could use that for. I set all the iron to smelt while harvesting all of my cacti and sugarcane, filtered all of the resources out of the sand chunks, set up some rotten chunks to turn into more leather, and it was just an overall productive day, going into day 60, where I turned all of the sugarcane into paper instead of sugar because it's finally time to start thinking about enchanting. I ground off the enchants from all of the blank enchanted books that I had found, using one of the books to craft myself up an enchanting table and then setting up a single bookshelf next to it. It's not going to be world-changing enchants, but if I can slowly work my way towards it, and right now I have the leather to spare, I can craft up a whole bunch of bookcases and get myself some good protection. Protection would be nice, unbreaking would be invaluable, as this armor surviving long enough to protect me from the heat for a full, or potentially the rest of this adventure, would be wonderful. But while I'm doing all of that, I moved all of these seeds and crops over to this side, as this is going to be my sort of culinary and enchanting space. The garden has served me really well, but I need to set up an area where I can actually thrive, not just survive. I placed all of the ropes to plant all of the tomatoes, putting down seeds as well here, and making a small trough where I could grow rice, and then just moving around and decorating a few things, preparing to move the cookpot over to this area and converting the floor from sand to wood, so it feels like an actual constructed base. I made one final bookcase before taking my sleeping bag over to the tower so I could sleep there, and started my next day getting shot right in the face. Okay. Oh yeah, but it happened in Minecraft too.
Are you serious right now? This pack is punishing. What is that? I'm so lucky that they burn.
Once that was done, I put down a single additional bookcase, and while level 2 enchants aren't great, it's something that I'm actively considering with how punishing this pack can be. I broke down a few of the oak planks here, getting these very cool oak mosaic tiles just to give a little bit more texture to the floor, just so the whole thing looks a little bit nicer. On the topic of floors, I went and converted a bit of the gatehouse to dripstone for the floor, just so it would look a little bit different from all of this sand, going and grabbing a few more trees and harvesting all of that while grabbing and moving everything for the cooking and smelting area, throwing it into a few backpacks, and then carrying it over towards the other side. I made some oak lattices just for decoration mainly, and then spent a good portion of the day just organizing all of the food, getting all of that set and sorted. When it started to get a little bit later into the night, I headed down into the workshop to just work and make more blaze rods. Bonk and smash and lava and smash and lava and smash. Having to make a piece of blackstone, convert that into a couple additional magma blocks, and then craft one of those into a piece of netherrack so I could make the blaze burner. All of this so I could start mixing together brass to get into some of the automated crafting that I can use in the future, but we're not quite there yet. I took the blackened bones that I had found and they converted into a lot of bone meal. I thought, let's head over towards the farm area, put down the magma block, that'll keep me warm, I could work through the night, but a single spider came in and attempted to assassinate me and was very close to successful, so I called it an evening. The following morning, it's right back to chopping trees as I need a lot more wood, both for potential bookcases as well as just continuing to build onto the base. I had to pillar my way up to take out a whole bunch of leaves, which I'm collecting to turn into bone meal, defending the wall from a few zombies who had crawled their way towards it, even being so brave as venturing out to fight them in an open field for a change. I have to put the magma block away whenever I'm over on this side of the base in daytime, going over to tend all of the crops, seeing a storm in the distance, but relying on the weather deflector under the lake here to keep me safe. I broke down all of the kelp so I could smelt that up, making myself a whole bunch more glistening melon and purifying a whole bunch of water, grabbing a few of the metals that I had actually left in here earlier, just so I can make myself a whole bunch more cactus juice so I would have some better hydration. I looked into other ways to get myself leather, and there's a few options, but by far the best one is relying on rotten chunks until I can get up to grinding wheels, where I can break down all of the saddles and horse armors that I've found into a ton of resources. I did just get a blaze burner, so I can start working on brass, which is what you need to make the automated crafters to make the wheels. And for that, I need a whole bunch of redstone and quartz and sandpaper, and it is a pretty intensive process, and it's gonna take me a while to do, but at least I have a mission. The next morning, I did my usual daily chores of harvesting all of the sugarcane and taking care of all of the crops here just so they could all regrow, and then dug my way through the wall because I haven't built a door over here, and it's time for another expedition. This time we're gonna venture eastward, further than we've gone before, as I've really only gone to the tower itself, and the desert has more for me to find, and more dangers in my way.
Oh, not good. Not good. Okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. For some reason, I thought I was gonna be way more dead.
Now knowing to keep an eye out for quicksand, as I had kind of forgotten that that was a thing, I ventured out keeping an eye on the horizon, mainly looking for other plants and some potential other structures. There were some ravines in my way, but between the fact of the cold drink that I had with the cactus juice, the soul fire that I'm holding, I'm just chilling. Literally, figuratively, making my way across, doing a little bit too much hopping and getting too comfortable scaling the dunes as I have to avoid waking the sandworms. But at one point, I just saw some villagers wandering around.
Wait. Where are you from? Are these villagers from the village that I saw? No way. I mean, they're booking it that direction, so that's vaguely back to... Is that an upside down camel?
Being confused at why the villagers are running, I saw a camel that was now upside down and trapped in the sand. I thought I'd help them, but they were not thankful for my assistance.
Oh no. Ow! I was trying to help you.
Healing myself up from that fight, I very carefully crawled my way over towards the structures that the villagers were, let's be honest here, abandoning.
Hello, friend.
And this was a pretty nice house with some good loot inside to boot. plus a whole lot of decorative blocks and items that I really, really want. So I ended the day by just, let's be honest here, stripping this place for parts. I grabbed all of the items from all of the chests, collecting everything I could find, checking behind the barrels to see if there were additional ones, taking a quick nap on the second floor, and then the next day, continuing Operation Locust Protocol. If you've been watching the One Chunk SMP, you know what I'm talking about. I grabbed everything, every carpet, every glazed terracotta, every barrel, every piece of spruce and jungle, dealing with every skeleton that was hiding underneath all of these awnings, all of them wanting to shoot me. But then I broke all of the awnings, all of the campfires, the signs, the grass blocks, the dirt, the azalea bushes, the doors themselves, the floors. I stole every single interesting block from that house. The villagers had left at this point. It's just imminent domain. Once I was done, I climbed up the hill directly behind, finding a massive canyon that was carved through the desert here, with a large open maw of a cave on the other side. The allure of potential resources there was a big draw, but it was already starting to get a little bit too late, and there were actual pillagers around, just wandering. So I kind of camped out in the house for the rest of the day, completed all of my collecting, having fully filled a backpack and a half with random blocks, assortments, and goodies, and called it an evening there. The following day, I carefully headed out of the house, just trying to make sure I wouldn't be jumped by a skeleton, climbing down into the canyon and starting to head into the cave itself. This is another big dripstone cave, and the zombies here could catch my scent from a distance, so I had to be careful that I would make sure to leave myself an exit path, but I was so busy looking down that I forgot to look up.
Oh my. Well, I need a new shield.
With my shield broken, I made myself a crafting table and then crafted up a quick replacement, actually using the med kit to heal myself just so I'd get back up to full on a single item. I dug down into the cave itself, putting down some soul torches to mark my way to keep a little bit of light, but also to set it up that I could run out of here without overheating. Grabbing a whole bunch of iron and copper from all of the different ore deposits here, the god rays coming in through the maw of the cave just making this whole thing look even more amazing. On the way out, one of those crawler zombies was chasing me, but they still burn in the sunlight. I didn't know mobs could still do that. Maybe they're a little bit weaker, but I looped my way back around, seeing a fossil just hovering in the side of the cave, but leaving that for now. Walking my way down the canyon, checking out a few pieces of ruins, grabbing some other things with enchanted book. Enchanted book. Enchanted book. This canyon is ominous, and I keep looking at the ridgeline waiting for something to jump me, but I was able to just fight my way through it. Seeing wind starting to hit me head on, which was a little bit concerning, but the very clear terracotta blocks of a mesa biome in the distance. There is another husk spawner right here, which I looted and then cleared out a few husks of, and the wind started to pick up. Stronger and stronger. That had me a little concerned, so I dug my way into a small space, digging into a tunnel, accidentally causing a small cave-in, which thankfully sealed the door for me, and sleeping inside the wall. The following morning, on day kill all the Jedi, I dug out and fought against the wind. It was blowing the sand, which is coarse and rough and gets everywhere, and you know I'm gonna have to make that joke at this point in the video. But with the tumbleweeds flying past me, my speed is actually reduced, pushing through into the mesa itself. So it took a while to cover just these couple blocks, but I finally set foot on something other than hot sand, instead being hot terracotta. It's not too drastically different, but finally it's a change in scenery, as well as a change in the mobs that I'm going to find. Kangaroos.
Do I have any carrots? I don't. Oh no. Okay, we need to mark this.
I started right away, mining up any ores that I saw before just starting to collect multiple stacks of terracotta in a couple different colors. It's a really nice block that I think will contrast and complement my base really nicely, so I want all of it so I can build something nice. I did find a spot where a spider hit me just out of nowhere, and I was kind of confused until I saw a spider spawner in the distance. Getting caught off guard by the cave spiders, and things got bad.
Oh, I hate so much what that chooses to be. Okay, sealed. I don't even care about the loot in there. No.
With the cave spider situation dealt with, I grabbed a little bit more terracotta, ascending the mountain and seeing the amazing vistas this mod pack has to offer.
I go so high. Oh. It's another Legion thing.
And as I'm hopping my way around the clay here, a realization came to me.
I think I can safely run here. We haven't had a single rumble. I think potentially the worms can't burrow through terracotta. Now we need to prep sleeping bag. Hopefully this is a friendly building, not an enemy building. I'll find out pretty quick. Enemy building. Okay, good to know.
But that's the thought for tomorrow. I dug into the wall and had a quick nap heading into the following day, where it's time to check out this structure here. I started by just blocking the doors, and that turned out to be a good call. This was another Legionnaire structure, and they can do a pretty big amount of damage. So I headed inside and immediately up onto the roof itself, breaking and stealing all of their beetroot because I want to feed myself, grabbing all of the dirt because that's also just useful, and then breaking into the ceiling to see what mobs are here. And when I wasn't looking, the Legionnaires were able to make it out the front door, and I thought I had blocked that.
Wait, can they break blocks?
I spent some time organizing all of my inventory, having thankfully trapped the ladder to put them in a really good murder kill box, relying on water to clear out and move away some of the Legionnaires so I can mine my way through just to try to find out where the spawner is. There has to be one somewhere as they're continuously repopulating, but I found out that it's hidden underneath one of the walls, eventually able to get low enough and block myself in enough that I could mine it all up, taking the damage from the spawner itself before having to only deal with a few stragglers. I needed to sleep as it was getting cold and I was starting to freeze to death, but I couldn't because the mobs were below me. So I pillared up and started to nap just as lightning struck. And that should have been a sign to leave, but I was so locked in on getting the remaining loot of the structure, including the loot that is just the blocks that are inside here, that I didn't pay attention until it was too late.
Oh, that's not good. That's very not good. Well, glad we got this. Oh, it's destroying that. I wanted the loot from there. Run. I could not have gotten that pearl at a better time. Oh my god. Seriously, without that pearl, I was absolutely dead. Like, no questions asked, just done for dead.
I waited in that hole for a while, just keeping an eye on the storm, waiting for it to slowly make its way past. Once I thought it was safe enough, I headed out, not being brave enough to run in that direction just yet, so instead checking out some of the other structures close by.
This feels a little cheesy, but we'll take it. Enchanted book. Diamond. Nice.
I mean, a solid bit of pyramid tier loot. Yep, I'll push that all into my backpack and keep it for now. Once the storm was gone, I did have a few skeletons that were chasing me that I had to take care of, but I pillared over towards the top of the Legionary Tower right here, breaking the spawner on the roof, blocking the staircase, and grabbing a whole bunch more emeralds and some enchanted iron armor, which could give me some good protection.
Oh, that's Legion pick. That's a shovel.
Not wanting to mock the Legionnaires for their naming scheme and instead just wanting to rob them, I headed back over towards the structure that I was at earlier, and it turns out the tornado had dealt me a massive blow as far as what I would be able to collect.
Most of the bookcases. I wanted those. Ooh. 6 armor, 1 heat resistance. Oh, but my chest plates are way better. That'll be good to switch into, though.
The majority of the blocks that I was here for had been sucked up and into the sky, and I only had a few scraps that I could work with. I still spent the time to break them all down and collect them. I wanted them, but as it started getting late, I just boxed myself in, starting to freeze a little bit, which was going to become a problem. I took my armor off so I'd be more susceptible to the temperature, but it was all just negative right now, and I couldn't sleep because there were too many mobs nearby, so I had to run, freezing to death, into a random cave to find just enough distance to take a nap. On day 60 nice, I stripped off all my armor right away just so I could warm up a little bit faster. Once I was thawed from my very cold evening, I put all of the desert armor back on so I could survive my climb up over the hill. I found a few random mob scraps on the ground and a skeleton who was a little bit too trigger happy trying to take me out, marking a structure that I could see on my mini-map as I started to wander my way back home. There's another big canyon here that I wasn't going to risk bridging over since I no longer had fall insurance, so I had to go all the way down one side and all the way back up the other, but I was able to pick up a little bit of iron and watch a gladiator fight on my way.
Why? Why is this skeleton hunting emu? It just feels unnecessary. Come on, my money's on the emu. Get him! Get him! Get him! No! Revenge! Yes! Oh my god.
Heading into the structure, it was another outpost of the Legionnaires, and I know from now, attack from the top. The Legionnaires don't defend from up. And this one, being a little bit of a mining camp, had a ton of ores for me to collect. I grabbed all of the emeralds and gold ore from the very top, trying to find a way into the structure itself, but unfortunately, they caught up with me, and I was starting to take a few shots as I climbed up and over the hill, healing myself with a few herbs, immediately stepping on a cactus to undo that progress, and breaking my helmet in the process. And if you're wondering how my helmet broke from stepping on something, don't think about it too hard, your brain's gonna hurt. But I made my way up the hill to this giant bowl. Maybe, potentially, this was a lake at some point in time far back in history, but right now it's just a giant dust bowl with a small oasis in the very center. Instead of climbing down and all the way up, since I'm back on sand, I don't want to be jumping that much, I went around the rim of the structure, finding a few diamond chunks along the way, and unfortunately still upsetting the worm just trying to cover a few blocks of verticality. However, I was pretty close to the house at this point, so I just slowly crawled my way over, dropping down and trying to never jump upwards, being able to put my sleeping bag down on the second floor of the structure. Using a small bit of respite time here to craft up replacement armor pieces in the morning, both my helmet as well as my boots, which were just about to break anyway. After that, it was time for the long walk home, and while this takes me about 10 minutes, after about 3 or 4 cuts, we're passing the pyramid and making our way into the bridge. I had to not jump into the house at the very last minute, waiting for the rumbles to end. Finally making it inside and being able to plant the potatoes that I had gotten from one of the zombies that I had killed, and spending a whole bunch of time dropping off and organizing all of the food supplies that I had here. Since I had new crops, I focused on using a lot of bone meal to just stabilize that, getting multiples in hand, as well as being able to plant multiple, so a lot could grow, taking some of the spare bone meal and putting it on all of the other crops as well, just to increase my reserves and shores, and shore myself up for some more food. I worked until the night when I started to freeze, going into day 71, where I just sat down, locked in, and started organizing, moving a lot of the supplies into different inventories, moving most of the armors down into chests down here, as once I have all of the brass that I know I'm going to need, I'm just going to break down all of these, so they should live here. I took a whole bunch of fence posts and boarded off the windows where skeletons were hiding in previously, building up the tower with a whole bunch of trees and placing down a lot of banners from the house that I had taken to give this place a nice flair. I'm using the Legionnaire blocks on the corners to do a little bit of extra decoration, and I figure we should probably start building a roof on top of this area. As it started to turn a little bit late into night, I finished harvesting my crops, cooking up a little bit of leather, and rested from a very productive day. The following morning, I wanted to look into all of the foods that I could potentially make with the new items that I had collected. And after doing a ton of research, it turns out that the cabbage rolls that I'm already making are pretty much the best possible option as far as their saturation, and they just work. So I chopped up a whole bunch more cabbage to make a whole bunch more leaves, harvested a bunch of beetroot, crafted up a bunch of glistening melon as well, so I can do multiple things at once, set the cabbage rolls to cook, and then headed down into the workshop to purify some water and haunt some amethyst to make myself a whole bunch of quartz so I could start working towards the rose quartz needed for all of the auto crafters so I could get towards the grinding wheels. That sent me back to figuring out how to get more redstone, and there's a lot of options of how I could do it, but realistically just going and mining is the best. I crafted up all of the purified water and melon slices into a bunch of glistening melon juice, heading back up and over towards the cooking area to pick up all of the dumplings that I had finished preparing, grabbing the leather that I had set to roast yesterday to craft up a whole bunch more bookcases so I could expand the enchanting area, and harvesting my first crop of these sun ferns that I can use them to make some heat resistance potions. I grabbed a few more bottles of water, set those to purify overnight, and while I was looking into actually how I could brew the potions together, I came upon a crushing realization.
Oh no. I don't think I can... How do I get nether wart? Oh no. All of that work to get the sun ferns for nothing. I can't make potions. Oh no.
That was heartbreaking. Every other time I've tried to do a netherless run, some mod adds nether wart blocks to the overworld, but that's just not generating in this terrain, so that means all of that, unfortunately, came to a dead end. I took my aggression out on the trees, just chopping them down, picking up the last little bit of the beetroot that I had cooked and breaking the magma block so I won't roast, making myself a bunch more bookcases and putting those in place, thinking, well, if I can't have drugs or potions, medicine. We should call it medicine. I'll instead focus at least on magic, improving a lot of my tools, first enchanting the shovel, then my axe, then my legion sword, and crafting myself up a brand new diamond pickaxe and getting Fortune 3 on the very first roll, which is awesome. I'm suddenly feeling a lot better about everything. I enchanted all of my gear, getting Prot 4 on the Legion pants, and re-rolling just to get some protection and unbreaking on all of the desert garments, mainly just to make them last a little bit longer, but also to make myself have a little bit more survivability. I harvested the crops, ventured out, killed a skeleton, and then grabbed a few more of the sand resource blocks that were around before taking a quick nap just so too many mobs wouldn't spawn. The next morning, feeling better protected than ever before, it was time to head out in the final cardinal direction, going south from my base and finally seeing what's over this hill that I've been living behind for 74 days now. There's some immediate resource chunks, 2 immediate rumbles from a worm underground that I had to just stand still to hide, and a Legion decorated nether portal that was just sitting here, obsidian, waiting to be harvested this whole time, just right behind the base. But I left that behind, just continuing off, finding a few wolves in the distance, but unfortunately, you can't tame them with bones. It just didn't work. So I continued forward, friendless once again. I made my way to another husk spawner, which I was able to break so much faster this time. It only cost me about a heart of health with the upgraded pickaxe, finding a well in the middle of the desert with absolutely no water in it, but a few little bits of treasure. I continued on, finding a few more structures, one of them with a trap chest that I actually took the time to disarm this time around, and another husk spawner, which I was able to break down, only costing me about 2 hearts worth of health, going in and getting all of the loot, and then absolutely ruining the organization of my main backpack.
No, I didn't want to do that. I hate the auto-organizing backpack for my main.
I just called it a day there, slept immediately, going into the morning of day 75, where I had to spend the time of putting everything back where I like it. I want it just so, okay? The auto-organizing upsets me. There was an oasis right next to here though, so I used the time to break down and get a whole bunch more crops from here. I was able to pick up the first carrots in the world, which was huge. Oh my God, carrots. That's huge. Grabbing a few more melons, some sugar canes, and just some general farming. I kept thinking that this little water fountain here, one of the buttons would reveal some kind of secret, so you know I pressed every single one, seeing something off in the distance that I definitely needed to go check out. Along the way, I was collecting a whole bunch of sand because I'm going to use that to collect the wall. And then I crested the hill, seeing a very old friend. That feels like something ominous. I want to keep my distance from it, but yet I'm still kind of attracted to just start wandering in that direction. Picking up a few bits of resources, I saw a single house here as well. There's a little bit of gold outside that I grabbed. There's some water and somebody sunbathing close to this thing. I'm not sure why people would stay this close to something so dangerous. But in going and checking around the house, at least they're well fed, well stocked, and well supplied. I broke down all of the barrels, heading inside, finding a bit of fire that I needed to take care of, and a single villager in here who was more than willing to do some trading.
Oh, no, no, no.
And that ominous feeling in the pit of my stomach, it was right. I immediately started to try to barricade the house using whatever blocks I could find, sealing the doors on the lower floor and then heading up to the upper areas to try to establish a shooting floor. I started freezing to death, so I took one of the magma blocks that was part of the oven, throwing it down just so I'd have an area of warmth. And with that little bit of time to prepare, the zombies started coming in.
Ow, ow. Oh my God. Pull out the bandages. This could get bad.
The mobs are already crawling outside, starting to pile up towards the balcony and finding their way into the basement, even though I don't know how. I threw down a brewing stand to trade with this villager here, turning them into a cleric so I could get a whole bunch of redstone. I do not have confidence in their survival, but I'm going to do my best. The TNT throwers were breaking the blocks, barricading the doors, so I had to constantly retreat upstairs, snipe them, and then run down, re-blocking the door off with whatever I could manage, just fighting through a small 1x1 hole, trying to not catch an arrow to the face. And if I don't handle them at the door, if I don't take care of them there, they start piling up along the outside, crawling up and making their way to the second and third floors, finding me anyway. I tried throwing some of the dynamite that I had back at them, and it did next to nothing. So I just worked through the night, and when it told me they were starting to burn, it lied. Even though the blood moon was over, the zombies were still persisting. None of them burned at this point, so I still had a long day ahead of me, just fighting at the door, stabbing everything in the ankles, catching the occasional shot in the head, having some tarantula hawks come in and wanting to become part of the problem too.
Oh, come on. I can't get up above half health. That's wild.
I tried sniping them from a distance, but they kept flying around, having to eventually poke my head up out of the ladder when they landed on the roof to take them out, seeing the final few zombies and sniping them when I could, walking around the perimeter and picking up the final bits of loot while clearing out the final stragglers.
Okay. That was very close. What am I roasting from? Oh, butts. All right. I was hoping for pearls. Pearls would have been really, really useful. But I guess not today.
But with the night survived and the attempt on my life leaving me mostly okay, I had to go talk with who was responsible.
I suppose I have you to thank for that, right? Been a long time. And I'm talking to a rock. 3,000 days, 3,100 days, and I'm talking to a giant stone pillar. This button's not even on. They can't even hear me. Thanks for that. Didn't kill me. Not this time. Not gonna stop him from trying.
Having almost certainly tempted fate, I went in to check out a nearby well, which had a little bit of archaeology that I could do down at the bottom, grabbing basically worthless things, but it was worth the shot, heading back over, and just to make things worse, sleeping in sight of the tower.
Another time, old friends. Another time. I do not have the mental energy for this right now.
Saying goodbye to my old frenemy, I continued off, exploring further than I've ever pushed before. Seeing a few more structures in the distance, these a bit more grand, a bit larger, and really, really interesting. The pyramid was the first thing that caught my eye, twice the size of anything else that I had seen, and as soon as you get close to it, you pick up mining fatigue, so getting into that is gonna be a problem.
Of course it does. Okay, let's explore the other things first. We'll come back to you.
So instead, I headed off to check out some of the other nearby structures. There's a brick tower here that feels like a bit of a parkour challenge, but you can just get rid of parkour when you have a pickaxe. Mining up to the very top of the structure, getting the redstone components, all of the bricks, and the glazed terracotta, mainly for decoration. The nearby statue didn't really have anything up at the top of the giant waterfall, but there was a bunch of coal, which is good to keep. There's a ton of sand resource blocks around that I made sure to dig out, but as it started getting a little bit later, I returned back to the half-ruined tower, making a small platform that I could sleep on away from the ground. The following morning, I sieved all of the important resources out of these sand chunks, having a little breakfast right here in the structure, before heading over towards the pyramid to see just how I can get into this thing. It is completely buried on all sides, and you can't mine your way in, so we're gonna have to take a different approach.
How do I get in? It can't be like go up to the top, can it? They can't expect you to actually just go up to the top of this thing. They 100% expect you to just go up to the top of this thing and jump in. We're not doing that. I have a different idea.
I don't feel like taking a 50 block drop into a random dungeon that I won't be able to escape from, so I thought, let's make myself my own door.
Much better.
It turns out I blew into the balcony of the main chamber of the pyramid here, but this comes with its own set of problems. I have mining fatigue whenever I'm in the structure, meaning I can't break the spawners. And because of the mod that makes the spawners harder to break, you can't place torches near the spawners to disable them either. So again, I'm gonna have to go with an alternative solution. I don't know how alternative solution has become code for blow everything up, but I'm gonna roll with it. All right, let's go.
Yes, it works.
Now having a way to deal with the spawners, I went around to anything that vaguely looked like it could contain one and blew it up. This might be destroying priceless ancient artifacts, but consider me the bad guy in an Indiana Jones movie for a change. It belongs in a museum. It belongs in my backpack. I lit all the braziers down here thinking maybe lighting them would trigger some sort of puzzle, but unfortunately not. Blowing up another area that had a chest in it instead of a spawner, so loot flew everywhere.
Enchanted book. Enchanted book. It's always just enchanted book.
The main floor of this chamber has a ton of puzzles in it. The books seem to indicate some sort of path, but I'm not 100% sure where that actually belongs. There's a little target puzzle that I need to do, and I shot everything, lit all the lamps, but nothing happened. You have to turn all the swords for the combination lock, so I started twisting those all around, thinking maybe, just maybe this would work, but I pressed the button, and that is a lot of husks to deal with, and I'm very glad I did it further away so so they didn't drop directly onto my head. And it turns out there was more heading from outside. I had myself a quick sleep, recovering the following morning and just trying to retain my position, taking out all of the ones who were spawning in here from the spawner, having cleared that out, and then making a small little hook that I could put TNT onto, going for 2 shots instead of 1 just to make sure that this would work. With that done, I had actually exposed some of the interior wiring and redstone for this place, but I'm more worried with the fact that I am burning to death from the campfires being lit, so I extinguished those before diving down into the belly of the beast, seeing if I could throw a little bit of sand into the gears here to make everything break.
Oh, that's terrifying.
And, as I've been saying, it's time for an alternative solution.
Oh, I did not expect that. That was a lot of explosives. Whoo, okay. Let's take a breath there. Oh my.
Once I had caught my breath from that explosion, I went and checked out the basement floor, seeing a traditional desert pyramid style platform at the very bottom that I can't defuse because I still have mining fatigue. I realized I had lost my sleeping bag and it was getting a little bit late, so I had to head back up to find it, putting it down but not being able to open it just yet. Finding out I had blown into another part of the interior wiring of here and wondering why I was so warm being down into the basement, finding an entire room coated in magma blocks, which is a parkour that I do not want to attempt right now. I headed back up towards my sleeping bag, finally able to sleep, having it break, so I was able to get it despite the mining fatigue, checking into a lot of the wiring here and deciding to blow some of it up just to see if it would help.
Oh, you're terrifying.
Having one child with 2 swords run out trying to stab my ankles immediately. Thankfully, the kid couldn't swim or couldn't climb water, so I was able to just shoot down, getting a major advancement and realizing that that was the key to everything.
Oh, I can mine. I can mine now. Yay.
Being able to mine my way through, I started breaking through individual rooms, seeing what all the loot was, what everything looked like, and then hearing something that I had forgotten about happen behind me.
Oh wait, I just realized, did a husk fall down in the main loot room? Oh, no. It was one of those little water cockroach, those things behind me. It went down there and blew it up. Oh, that's heartbreaking. Having missed out on some of the best loot of the structure, most likely, I really need to clear the remaining rooms here just to see what I could find. There was a lot of zombies with shields and really dangerous looking swords. I blocked them in for right now, having one make their way out and having to kite them around, taking quite a few hits to kill them. So they are pretty armored as well. I keep digging through into other rooms, being very nervous about everything being trapped here, being mostly correct about half the time. Some chests are trying to apply weakness potions for just a few emeralds. Some are just outright exploding. Some are just trapped chests sitting on a floor that do nothing and is more psychological damage than anything else. I found another little parkour section over a few spawners that I didn't want to risk, making sure to excavate around every chest I see just so nothing bad will happen. Getting rewarded extensively for looking around. Ooh, golden apple. Honey. Oh, wait a second. That's actually... Wait, beetroot soup stack? Oh, they stack.
I'm really glad I'm only getting to some of this now instead of when I had mining fatigue, because that sand would have killed me as well. There is no saving throw for that when you can't dig your way out. But I found my way into a small forge area that had a lot of different blocks that will be good for decorating, as well as a lot of gold, which will be really nice for making golden apples or more glistening melons. I disarmed more arrow traps, I looted more barrels, I collected and filled my backpack as much as I I could.
Enchanted book. Diamonds. Goat horn. I think that's off because I have discs off.
Continuing to mine through the walls and excavate around, going into the following morning, where a bunch of husks had made their way inside from just me failing to sleep, realizing it was the following day a bit into this one. There's a storm raging outside, so I want to stay underground right now. The last thing I want to do is go up to the surface, get picked up by a tornado, and have no way to save myself. So I'm keeping working my way around, finding a large room with a ton of spawners in it. Fighting at the wall doesn't really work. They spawn faster than I can kill them. So I had to back up to be out of range using a bow and arrow to clear a gap. Running my way in, breaking one spawner, heading back out, repeating the process for the further one, and then doing the same on the opposite side. Being able to take out all 4 spawners by rinsing and repeating and playing smart. And once I was inside, it was clear that this was the main room of the structure.
Yo! Okay. That's a god apple. Not bad. Oh, there's 2 more. Wait, an actually enchanted book. An actually enchanted book. Enchanted book. An actually... Wait, did that just stack or something? No, okay, good. Oh my goodness, an actually enchanted book. That's huge. Oh my goodness. This is awesome. Which banner do we actually want for the shield? Because this one's not looking great. This one's cool. We're gonna save you for later. Yeah, that's fully destroyed, I figured. Is there a crafting table anywhere? Never mind. Actually enchanted book. I'm not used to this. Why is this the one structure that all the loot works in?
Having hit the point where I think I have everything useful from here and no longer hearing the storm above me, I went back up the following morning, dealt with a few husks that were just standing around, and looked around to get my bearings. There was one more skeleton that I had to clear out, but it was time to start heading home. It's a long walk. It's an arduous one, and I made sure to kind of retrace my same steps, having to be careful to not do too much jumping at the risk of waking the worm. I passed the obelisk, I went through the craggy areas, through the cactus forests and fields that I had passed by earlier, taking the full day to make it back towards home, getting 95% of the way before finally upsetting the thing underground. And I'm starting to think it might just live under my base at this point, because there's no way that I didn't upset it until right here. But once the rumbling was past and I was safely inside the walls, I finally breathed a sigh of relief.
Okay, we're home. We're home and we have an absolutely ludicrous amount of loot that we now need to deposit. This is gonna take a while.
Look, in 100 days, not everyone is gonna have death-defying escapades. Sometimes you just walk a really long time, have a whole bunch of loot, and then need to spend the other half of the day de-looting and dropping things off. I disenchanted books, organized food, harvested the crops that were waiting for me here, including the very useless sunfern, realizing I had picked up pumpkin seeds, getting a whole new crop unlocked for me, and having barrels literally overflowing with food, leaves, and supplies. There's a few mobs kind of lingering outside the walls, but after this really long day, I was not having it. The next morning, I just started focusing on decorations, putting some different plant life that I had collected from around the lake area, but then taking some of the more decorative and refined blocks and putting them up in the bedroom/enchanting space that I had set up for myself. I also need to turn that area into long-term storage, as backpacks are great for moving things around, but not great for keeping everything in place. So I crafted up as many chests as I could fit in the space here, and there's no way it's going to be enough, but it's at least a start. I can never work work undisturbed, though. I got into a little bit of a sniper duel with the skeletons, but I had the high ground, so I won that one, turning my attention to actually enclosing this area with a roof, hoping that the shade might make it a little bit better with the temperature. I'm using all the bricks that I've collected from the structures I've found and the pots I've smashed to make something that actually looks unique, putting leaves in between just so I think it works. They're a little dry, a little brown because we exist in a desert, but it's nice to have something even vaguely green here amongst the completely endless sands. And I just got the thing done when it was nighttime. Seriously? Twice in just as many days. Well, thanks, I hate that. Let's go work through it. I'm just gonna work through it. What is that? Hard falling. Oh. Can I use this? Make arrows? I can't. Oh my god. Oh my. It's really bad. I don't have any more tonics. Oh, and they destroyed my pants. That explosion did so much armor damage. This might not be smart. Having to desperately upgrade my gear after a very rough night, I returned back up to the cave in the morning, having to deal with a few mobs right at the gate, but being able to clear them out. Unfortunately though, something, and I'm still not sure what, poisoned me horribly, and I'm out of healing herbs. And actually, since I had so few of them, and the herbs wouldn't get me up to full health from half a heart, I upgraded them to tonics, investing a little bit of gold to just get regen 2 and a little bit more bang for my buck. They also heal multiple limbs, so those are really great. Once I was back up to full health, even though I only had 3 of them left, I made my way back up to the lake, took a whole bunch more sniper fire, and had to fight my way over towards the wall to finally plugging it. Heading over towards the farming area, breaking the magma block so I could not roast over here, and just finally taking a breath. Okay, I think we're good. That was almost really bad. With the blood moon survived, I returned back to the task at hand, getting myself organized. Using some of the item frames from the pyramid, as well as a little bit of leather that I had since I had so much, to make item frames to label all of the chests to finish a 4x3 wall. This will undoubtedly not be enough storage, but it is enough for me to start vaguely organizing things. I dropped my entire actual inventory off into a chest just to have as many slots as possible for organizing moving materials in bulk, from backpacks to barrels and chests, trying to keep everything in place. That process took me into the night, where I actually started freezing to death right here by my bed, but I was really motivated to try to do it. The only problem being I couldn't sleep down here now, as there were monsters crowded around the walls, so I climbed up the tower using my sleeping bag on top of the post to just get a little bit of a nap, and then powering through the final bit of it as we're speeding through it on screen until I finally got to the point where all of the inventory was organized and everything was roughly in its place. There were storms brewing in the distance, so I just kind of bided my time, taking some work on grinding off the rough enchants I had put on the pants that I had made and trying to get actual high quality ones. Getting protection 3, so they're gonna keep me alive, being very cautious of the amount of wind I'm seeing. The weather deflector should work. It should keep everything away, but I'm not 100% certain on how much distance it actually covers. Wait. Okay, we're good. The deflector
The deflector's still working. I got scared because it's right here. Oh, that could have been really bad. That was just right up on top of the base.
With my equipment, inventory, and supplies now finally sorted, I relit the braziers and then headed down into the workshop to get a whole bunch more water set into the purifier and crafted up the final bit of rose quartz that I would need, returning back up to my bed and getting some much deserved sleep. All right, buckle up. Day 86 is just create. I know the way that I interact with this mod and with redstone in general greatly upsets some of you, but we're gonna try our best here, okay? I made myself the sandpaper and polished up the rose quartz to get that ready, having to change from the press to then have to head up and grab supplies to return back down to make the casings, to be able to make a mixer, to be able to get the copper and zinc mixed together with the blaze burner to be able to make brass, moving the pumping station off somewhere else, having to reconfigure all of the pipes for that, replace and reconfigure all of the gears, making myself a whole bunch of brass casings, checking out all the water that was purified, making myself a flywheel just because I think it's pretty, hooking up the press to make more plates, crafting that with the rose quartz to make more diodes, setting up all of the mechanical crafters in the grid that you need to be able to get towards the crushing wheel. I don't have a wrench, so I have to place everything correctly, and I can't set it up where everything else is set up because it's too fast and overstressed. So I had to make a new shaft across the whole area, which just looked like a mess, honestly, but that's just me whenever I do create. Once I had reconfigured all of the crafters that they were in the correct direction, I actually had to go out and get a little bit more andesite as I was completely out, making up the remaining alloy I needed, slotting in all of the items, getting even more alloy because I had grossly underestimated what I needed, and finally, after a full day of work, going through the slowest possible crafting of crushing wheels. With that done, I immediately started demolishing everything I had just made, breaking down all of the additional gears, all of the mechanical crafters, and turning those into decorative blocks at the back of the base. Then, more create hell. We have to get these crushing wheels spinning at speed and in opposite directions, which is honestly pretty difficult. I made a few belts out of the kelp that I had, taking a look at some of the options I had to make with that, including some funnels. I'm going to use those to be able to automate a good portion of the process here, as they work better with create operations than hoppers do, and they'll wait for create tasks to complete before they just suck the item up in the middle of it. I set up barrels on both sides, put all of the funnels in place, immediately overstressed the system from having the crushing wheels turning too fast, having to put gears in place and getting it so that they're spinning in the wrong direction, but they are spinning at speed. So I had to get one extra conversion to switch it to counter rotate the other way. And I know I could make a reversing gear shift right now, but at this point, it's one of those situations where I was just upset and stubborn, and I really wanted to do it. So I actually broke down one of the interchanges back at the initial gearbox to just run the shaft from an earlier gear so that everything was finally working.
Yes! So much resources. Just watch it go. Yes! Over a stack. Oh, this is so good.
So with a bunch of materials gathered and collected from all of the horse armors I'd been hoarding for 87 days and a whole bunch of brass and other materials set up to smelt, I took a well-deserved nap, returning up to the surface the following day, doing a bit more organizing, getting all of the plants into one chest and all of the treasures, records, and other things into what is now a very empty barrel. I grabbed some of the items, moving them over towards the other side just to condense and consolidate all of my storage and valuables into one nice and neat storage system. So that way, when you all get the world download from this world, you can explore freely. I crafted up a dozen more melon juices so I'd have what I need to be able to venture out, having a single explosive zombie waiting outside my walls and causing me a few problems. With that done, I grabbed a ton of dirt to allow the area on the interior of the wall surrounding the oasis to grass over, as I want a lot more of this space to be this green refuge that I've made for myself amongst this very harsh and unforgiving desert. I also set up a small patch of moss in the opposite corner just so I had a couple different flavors of green without having to worry about it overriding the dirt if I want to go make myself some more seeds in the future. I grabbed all of the flowers that I had gotten from the oasis that I found a while back, planting a lot of them down, and now you see why I was kind of bummed having to use some of them to craft up some healing herbs, so I have less color diversity and variety here, but with a few extra little touches, this is feeling like a proper guarded oasis, something that I actually feel comfortable heading out in the night to defend while resting inside. The grass is going to need time to grow, and that's basically going to need sunlight, so we're getting right into day 89, and we're approaching the end game here. But no matter how far you get in Minecraft, you will always be chopping trees, investing a few extra diamonds into a diamond hoe. To complete the greenification of this side of the map, I actually planted and grew an azalea tree, leaving it here, as I don't need to harvest it for wood, and azalea leaves are one of the few that actually stay green in desert environments, so it makes for a really nice pop of color. I banked off all of the natural resources and headed up the tower, wanting to focus on growing this one, adding a few extra logs and fences, trying to build this layer by layer so I won't have to climb up from underneath, using a lot of the jungle wood that I had remaining to set up the general basket of the watchtower, a few wooden supports on both sides, signs for just some additional details, and then continuing the same brick roof that's over the enchanting area to complete the top of the tower here. I want it to be a little bit more flat, don't need to bring it to a point, so I actually took the 9 glazed aqua terracotta that I have just to really give this a very cool goldfish effect on top of everything. It looks awesome on the minimap, and with a little bit of leaves, it looks really nice here as well. And it serves as a great place to stand by and watch the horrifying lightning storms pass by through the desert from a modicum of safety. And I'm far enough up off the ground that I can even sleep there. Finishing up this block of recording though, I wanted to get my gear a little bit better, so I enchanted and upgraded my bow and my longsword, adding power onto the first and sharpness onto the second. Now I'll be able to do a little bit more damage, so if any more hordes come knocking, I can do more to fight back. A few pieces of my armor weren't looking great, so I crafted up replacements, taking a look at what enchants I could put on them, and seeing that some of the really good stuff was out of reach, so I used those nuggets of experience from all of the horse armors that I had broken down just to get myself a few extra levels and do some enchanting. That still wasn't perfectly enough, so I did fight all of the mobs that were just hanging out around the house, taking a few shots to the head and breaking the helmet that I was using currently, so I now doubly need the new one properly enchanted and upgraded. Once everything around the base had been fully taken care of and I finished drinking a few tonics to fully recover all of my health, I did a little bit of bone mealing on the ground here just to get myself some more seeds and flowers so I could craft up more herbs and turn them into tonics. I'm going to commit to the highest tier healing element at this point because we're basically in the end game and I have a feeling things are about to get worse before they get better. I was able to make up a quarter stack of all of that, so I finally have some healing supplies on hand. Heading out to go collect a bunch of sandstone as I want to continue improving and terraforming the area between the base as well, so it's not as much of a death trap if I get caught out there. I set a whole stack of sand to smelt as well, as I'm going to need a bunch of bottles to turn these healing herbs into a bunch more tonics, taking a quick rest going into day 91, where the glass is still smelting, but I have a lot more work to do. I spent a bit more time organizing my inventories, finding a bunch more zombies lumbering my way, including one of the big ones.
Oh, they're immune to projectiles. Why are you immune to projectiles?
Not being able to take this thing out at range leaves me with one terrifying option, and this thing hits like a truck. One punch, taking me down 7 hearts and completely breaking my skull open. This is not something I want to encounter, and I had to sprint away, throwing a golden apple down my gullet and whatever healing items I could manage. I'm now susceptible to the heat until I could get my backup desert cap on, but all the running and jumping around is at risk of waking the sandworm. My only saving grace is that it's slow, giving me just enough time to recover and plan my next move. And my first thought was explosives.
Wait, do I not have a flint? I don't have a flint and steel.
All of that damage for 2 rotten flesh. It drops nothing useful, but it is very much an existential threat.
That's big and scary.
Not wanting more of them to get summoned, I cleared out a few other zombies that just happened to be wandering by, planting down a few more plants, and finally being able to get a little bit of glass out of the furnace using a piece of paper as basically a hot plate or a hot mitt so I could reach into the furnace and collect the items. That allowed me to craft up a bunch of bottles and therefore a bunch of tonics, being able to fully recover all of the damage to my body. And now that I have a bunch of crops and carrots, this might feel like a very last-minute distraction, but I'm going out to find some friends. Running along the desert, waking the worm, and having to crouch my way for a portion of my progress, taking the very long and arduous walk eastward. One that takes most of the day, requires jumping over ravines, dodging tarantula hawks, and just as it's getting dark, making it only as far as the waystone house that I had fully demolished previously, heading up to the 2nd floor to sleep. We're getting right back out on the next morning because I'm trying to move with purpose here. I want friends. I've put all this work in to make this green space here in the desert, and I want things to share it with. Maybe not other people, but at least something living and breathing. And considering I've killed a camel along the way, I need something just a little bit more resilient. With the mesa in sight, I had to be very careful as my jumps were still potentially waking the worm. And I don't know if it will follow me into that biome or if it is strictly locked into the sands, but it rumbled twice right on the hill as I was exiting that biome, and I was terrified. But I have a goal, half a stack of carrots, and I really want to make some friends. So I headed into the biome to tame some kangaroos. They are a formidable fighting force. So if something comes at me in the last little bit of this adventure, they can actually help me defend myself. But first, I need to get home. I don't know if them hopping around is going to potentially wake the sandworm. So this is a massive risk, as the only place I know I'm safe is the place that I'm actively walking away from. So I'm taking it personally slow, hoping that maybe, just maybe, it's only triggered by me. Hitting up a few structures and ruins, making sure to disarm any traps that I find, and grabbing any really valuable resources from the sand I see on the surface. And every time things start to rumble, I just freeze. The next morning, we're finishing this 3-day odyssey outward to Eastern lands, just trying to get home. I'm walking as slow as I can, but definitely having more mobs moving with me is making the tremors more and more frequent. And all it's gonna take is triggering this thing once to practically end my world. So I'm being as careful as I can, slowly, methodically moving, seeing the pyramid in the distance, one more rumble standing right outside the door, and finally safely making it inside. Now, to breed kangaroos, you need dead bushes. So good for me, I'm in a desert. I can find dead bushes for days. And just like that, my army grows. Yes. Oh, and they stay there. That's awesome. I just want this space I've made to have something living in it after I'm gone. Call me sentimental from all of my time in UHCG. But probably the best part of the kangaroos is you can arm them with a lot. So I grabbed the remaining glass, making up the final few tonics, and then crafting up a few sets of iron armor. They can wear chest plates and helmets, and they will use iron weapons if you give them. They'll actually use any weapon if you give them, but iron is what I can afford to do right now. Grabbing a whole bunch more glass bottles for some additional supplies, and then going to enchant the chest plate that I had made for myself to repair the one that was very near broken, and the hat as well. I have a little bit less on the protection enchants now, but I'm hoping that the diamond armor will offset that, making me still be a bit more survivable than I was previously. I grabbed my gold from the furnace and set a little bit of leather to smelt as I had a quick rest going into day 94. Clearing out a few zombies around here, and I want to focus on the actual exterior of the base as well. I've put a lot of effort at this point into decorating the interior, and I want to make this look like it actually exists instead of was just plopped down on the hill. So I made a few sandstone obelisks here, copying some geometry that I've seen a few times, putting some different bushes and plants in place, making a proper wooden walkway and entrance to the base, which just hadn't existed. Finally, stairs. After 94 days, I could finally just walk into the place, planting down cacti and palm fronds, some wood in the ground to make this look like a well-trodden trade path. Setting up a proper kill box in the area between the bases, I put down structures on both sides. Having a harvest moon happen, first time I've had a good moon happen in a very long time, and immediately turning my attention to my crops. I extinguished the soul fire, placed down the magma block to keep myself warm, and absolutely went feral on all of the farming items here, using whatever bone meal I could to craft up a ton of it. And now that I have carrots, I actually have new food options on the table. I headed down into the workshop, picking up all of the metals that I had left smelting overnight that had just been sitting here for a while, getting a whole bunch of straw from a bunch of logs that I had chopped on a cutting board and converting that into a bunch of rope so I could expand the area up into the tower. I broke the furnace to collect all the experience from in here, using all of that to potentially go do some enchanting, breaking all of the kelp in the lake, and just having to crouch around my base once again as things rumbled mysteriously underground. My third kangaroo had grown by this point, so repopulation is going well. Heading into the cook pot to grab all the cooked rice that I had made and combining that with carrots to make an actual sushi roll. This being a better version of the cabbage rolls that I had been making for this whole adventure. It has double the saturation, it gives me some positive potion effects. The only negative being it takes a little bit longer to eat, but this isn't something you're gonna try to eat mid-combat. And just like any good chef, I made my mistakes. Ow, shoot. Of course I burned myself at the last possible second. But as the sun rose and day 94 was over, it felt amazing. We've done so much. And after everything we've accomplished, we're at the point where I am fully thriving in this base. I spent the time to just take out all of the husks that had collected around me, putting down the sandstone necessary for the final obelisk to finish decorating and organizing the outside. Realizing that I can craft myself up some of that dynamite. So if a bunch of skeletons or zombies start giving me trouble, I could take them out. The only problem is it doesn't 100% work, and it seems a little bit glitched. So I had to go through and figure out how that worked. It would constantly reset the stack size, give me the items back. So I'm thinking maybe automated crafting could bypass that. It's some kind of inventory issue. Eventually, I got it figured out, having a stack of them just sitting just in case. And it appears my efforts to make this place look like a place of trade, a proper bastion of safety in the desert, finally paid off.
Is that a wandering trader? Hello? It is! Nessa, hello! What do you have? You know what? I'll buy the flowers. And I'll buy the banana peels. Selling sand is not smart here.
And having my first trader finally come to the oasis, I wanted to finish things off with some lighting and small decorative walls around the space, bringing an actual clear lit path leading people towards a place where they could feel safety and security in the desert here. And if all else fails, it's filled with dynamite, so I can actually defend it if I wanted to. And almost as if I had pushed my luck and made a final space, had claimed a piece of this desert as my own, there was one final threat on the horizon.
Oh, that's a problem. Okay. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. Well, at least I've made a pretty place to die. Hi, we're gonna fight. Get him! Get him! They're dying from entity cramming. Oh, no, 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 no. No, 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 no. What am I supposed to do here? What am I? There, over the wall. Oh my god, they're still coming. There's still so many of them. Not the war. The sounds are overloading. The game doesn't know what sounds to play. What do I even do here? What do I even do? There's so many. They're all pushing in. They're at the bottom of the tower. Okay, I have an idea. You two stay. Oh, that worked. Yes, it's working. Come on, come over here, tasty brains. Can I sleep up here? I can. No! Oh my goodness, there's still so many more.
Waking up on day 98, the past 3 days basically had been a blur. Fighting constantly, nonstop, losing several kangaroos along the way, and having to resort to TNT bombing the area around my base just to survive. But I had finally secured the walls. I had finally crafted up the weapons and ammunition that I could rely on to finally arm myself. And through small little defensive slits and gaps, I had secured and cleared the area, being able to brave the outside of the space for the first time in almost 4 days straight.
No! You menace.
And with another kangaroo down, I set the final one inside the base to just rest and stay safe, finding a few zombies trapped inside the walls and defenses I had built for myself, clearing them out, thinking just barely that I had made it through and survived. And when I let my guard down for a moment, so the desert claims another victim, but I'm not done yet. We're finally gonna fight the worm over on my second channel. Video is linked right here on screen right now, and I'm still probably live for my Subathon, which you can go check out on Twitch. Thank you all so much for watching, and welcome to Chapter 4 of the Multiverse, everyone. See you soon.